It's 7 o'clock on Wednesday, November 8th, and I'll call the Finance Committee meeting to order. I'm Sarah Mellish, the chair. I have with me Maury Creighton, Mike Pratt, Andy Olderman, Tom Parkins, Dean Nahadas, Peter Twining, Greg Fetterspiel, and Kathy Bellata from the Select Board. So the first item on the agenda is 4 articles on the town warrant. Things have changed a little since we voted. A lot. So the first item is Article 3, which is the school district audit. At our last meeting, we had voted to recommend, but at that point in time, the dollar amount was 60,000, not 80,000. So I figured that we needed to review it again. Does anybody have any discussion about it?
Did the scope change, or what changed in the and that led to what I gather is a price from?
Well, so the 80 would be the upper limit. I think we're gonna be in the 60 to 70,000 range.
Oh, I see.
The contingency fund.
Yeah.
It's right. So if the high end estimate is 120,000, so 2/3 of that is.
I understand the math. I was just
Right.
curious if something else underlying it happened.
No, it's just a hedge.
Caution.
Who's controlling the scope of work? Is it the school committee? Is this under this?
Did that?
No, it's with the 2 towns.
I believe the school committee voted last night not to contribute to it or really support it. Is that correct?
Take no position.
Take no position. Okay.
Now, is
Yes.
part of the scope on this to, see if we're accurate with our apportionment stuff?
No.
Formula?
Or look for things that we should be doing to be more cost efficient.
It's like if you work in a corporation, you bring outside consultants in to look at various areas of your business, to look at efficiencies, to come up with new ideas. I think that's the point of this.
Fresh set of eyes,
Yeah.
third party, impartial.
Similar to the report, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, that Hamilton one I found seems
Yeah.
like
And
at a
it,
very high level. It was done back in like 2010,
Yeah,
11.
that was an example that has been used.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed pretty comprehensive and it seemed to be looking for efficiencies, both operational and economic, and, it seemed pretty soup to nuts.
and it would be up to the school committee to implement any.
And
Oh.
does the scope say what we all just supposed? Is that what it
It
said?
hasn't been completed yet.
So we have a draft. Certainly
I see,
circulated
I see, it
draft.
hasn't been completed yet. Got it.
Is this
I
the
understand
total?
what we want. I was just curious if it. that what
Our
it said.
portion.
Okay, and Essex has, according to the apportionment, or is it
Right, we're
split?
based on the 2/3, 1/3.
Okay, yeah.
Rough costs proportionate.
And our spending is based on it being approved by the company.
Both towns. Both towns have a special town meeting on Monday.
Yep, thank you.
So
Who's driving the bus in terms of, RFP and getting quotes and bids and?
So Ben Bullock from Essex, who's the chair of the finance committee in Essex. I'd say he's taken the lead on this. He drafted the first version of the scope of work and sort of a rationale. And so he's been working with, I think he reached out to you, Maury,
Yeah.
a couple of others.
So it's sort of being reviewed at the moment, and I think, we're probably jumping around the agenda, but the school committee last night was. To bring this up and look at it, and I think it was at the tail end of their agenda. I was unable to attend the meeting, so I wasn't there. But I heard it got a little contentious, and they basically took, as Greg said, no position, which is basically. No participation, no active participation.
When the school will have to be an active participant in terms of the data that would be necessary to collect. And I think once it get, I'm hopeful that once it's underway, they will certainly participate and engage. There was a debate about whether they should contribute or not. I think we prefer that they don't. It would be better to have just the 2 towns contribute in order to have a little more control over the scope. So that's where it stands.
Is there a specific consultant in mind that they have? You know,
They've reached out to, I think they've reached out to 2 or 3 so far.
so it's not close.
And he has gotten a range of quotes, rough estimates, without, detailed scope of work. He's got some ballpark
And-
figures.
And at least one of them or two of them, Pam. I don't know, how do you say it?
Superintendent,
Yeah, was familiar with them.
good.
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
Maury, has a report like that been done sometime in the past that you can recall?
No, so it hasn't, they've never undertaken this, to my recollection, since the district was formed around 2000, so. It's a pretty reasonable thing to do at a 20-year interval, and as Sarah said, it's. A lot of companies do this, it's, pretty high level, which is good.
I mean, worst case scenario, you spend the money and they don't find any savings or efficiencies, right? That's like the worst case.
Yeah.
Right?
But at least it,
Best case, you find some
Yeah.
stuff.
You know where you stand,
Yeah.
which is important.
And I think this is a good year to take the expense because Essex has already requested a 2.5% increase with the school, so. We should have a good year and hold on with reserves, I guess.
And
I think the hope is the effort will also turn up things in addition to potential financial savings or whatever. Just operational things. I mean, these folks do, audits of different school districts in different places. So they bring, a lot of information to the table that may be beneficial overall, different ways to do things.
Yeah, you beat me to the punch. So I didn't look through every page of that Hamilton one-on-one, but to your point,
Yeah.
they talked about some nice shared service things that I wouldn't have thought of, like, sharing, I don't know, IT services with the town or payroll and HR, like thinking outside the box legitimately, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
right? So
makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, do I have a motion to recommend Article 3?
Yes, we do.
I'll second.
Okay. Ready to vote? Maury,
Yes.
Mike,
yes,
Andy,
yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Peter, and
Yes.
Sarah says yes. No, you appeal some, okay. Next is Article 6, which is the fire department SUV for 64,000, and I think that when we looked at it last time, we wanted some information regarding the overall plan for equipment replacement, and I think that the chief had created something, and maybe the chief can speak to that.
Yeah, so I kind of took what Chief Cleary had developed and it's actually gone through all the chief. There's been some slow adjustments to it over the years. And it's not, I don't want to worry everybody with the bottom line because our equipment costs a lot of money. I totally understand that. This is just taking the recommended replacement intervals for a department our size. So a department like Boston, they get 3 years out of a pump front line because it's running 24/7 nonstop. We can get 10 years out of a pump front line. And hopefully the idea is to get 10 years of it back line. So you have some kind of consistency if you have mechanical issues and it's not kind of what we dealt with last year was we have to hurry up and kind of find a solution. So these replacement dates, I think, can be adjusted as long as everything's mechanically sound to kind of go in harmony with our overall townwide capital plan, which I've seen the outlook over the next 10 to 20 years. So obviously there's going to be some massaging that goes on with the replacement dates. But ideally, if we can get into a place where we have a frontline piece and then something to back it up if we have a catastrophic failure, that will give us a good avenue to extend the life. For example, our engine 1 right now is a 2011, and we're still running it as our frontline pump, so it goes out all the time. Ideally, at this point in time, would be a reserve pump as our backup. The guys are very good with equipment. I will tell you, I've worked a few different departments, and they extend the life out of everything that they get. So they baby the apparatus and take care of it. So we do extend the life as much as possible. So this is just kind of my initial rendition of my kind of plan. And I'm certainly open to questions, feedback. And things like that.
Yeah, can you speak a little bit about desire to use an SUV for the ALS equipment rather than continue to use engine one?
Sure. So a lot of our mutual aid that we provide is our paramedic service. We ask for a lot of fire mutual aid. What we can offer is paramedics. At the current moment, if Essex requests a paramedic, we have to send our only transporting ambulance to go service that request. So that doesn't leave a vehicle in town ability to transfer somebody if they're having a heart attack and stroke. Those are the two big ones that we can't fix. Most of the stuff we can fix. Those are the two big ones I need to get the hustle for. The SUV gives us the ability to send that paramedic to Essex in an SUV, leaving that ambulance available in town. So that way, if we do have a medical in town, we have the ability to transport our visitors and residents. So I guess
They can use the ethics ambulance.
we use the Essex ambulance transports, our medics just jump on board with those.
I said it's more about qualified personnel.
Correct, yeah, so right now, our ambulance meets up with the Essex ambulance, the patient's in the Essex ambulance, and both ambulances drive to the hospital. So it's kind of a waste of a transporting resource. At that point, my hope is, if we can transition another ambulance in, then it wouldn't be as much of an issue, so you'll see that SUV either transition out at the end of its life. Or, if we find another use for it, we can do that.
Are we putting a lot more wear and tear on engine one by having it be the backup?
So yes, so engine one right now, if we're at a 3-person crew and it happened this morning, the ambulance was out on a call, we have another call. The one person's taking that engine by themselves because they have to be a jack of all trades. They might be going out on a carbon monoxide incident, they might be going out on medical, and kind of engine one has everything in it. So it's getting a lot more road miles than it would. And the other kind of concern I have is a lot of our driveways in town are tight and narrow. That truck being operated by a sole occupant without anybody being able to back it out of a driveway or a tight spot, we increase the likelihood of that truck being in an accident and having to be repaired, etc. So the SUV is also a little bit more nimble if we have a single person going to a call with simultaneous calls going on.
Can I back up for 1 second? You were talking about the current ambulance and then replacing that ambulance.
Yep.
So at that point, what happens to the SUV?
So at that point, my hope is, the capital plan so far is to put in for an ambulance for July 1st. Even if we order July 1st of 24, we're not gonna see it until probably July of 26, if not later. There's a 2.5-year lag time by the time we put in an order for an ambulance. At that point, our A1 is gonna be past its, we can get, most places use, like Essex does a 5-year frontline, 5-year backline plan. We can do 7 and 7, so we can get 14 years out of the truck. 7 is a primary, 7 is a backup. I'm not sure if you guys are all aware, we did have 2 ambulances, the engine blue in ambulance 2, and then that was recently sold. That was right when I was coming in, so probably July timeframe, because the cost of a new engine it wasn't a good cost benefit analysis to try to repair that one. So.
And you get an electric SUV?
If you want to add a zero to it, sure.
Have we got a salvage value for the existing ladder truck?
So I'm fingers crossed, we went to 15 different places, or our Rosenbauer, who we're getting the new truck from, went to 15 different areas. And after a second call to some, we finally got an offer of $50,000. We're waiting for a paperwork to come through that actually says that they'll put the money where that is, but in the scope of things, 50 versus 1.4 is, 2 ends of the spectrum, but it's better than 0. So, I look at it as, probably close to $10,000 in scrap metal, at least we're getting something going forward. I looked at kind of, if we could broker it to another town, maybe New Hampshire, that doesn't have the emissions. The problem is liability wise, that's something we'd own it for a little bit while after we've transferred it, just like if you buy a used car with a running line. I don't think that's something that would be worthwhile entertaining. I think it's better just to cut ties and send it away.
Big picture in terms of the fleet
Yep.
is, it looked like there was a second engine that was being contemplated.
So we've always historically, and I'm going back when I was here 20 years ago,
Okay.
we've always had a primary and a backup.
Yeah.
Because right now, if engine one has a mechanical issue, we're right at the current moment, we're borrowing a Linfield truck as our spare, but we'd be up the creek.
Okay.
Well, we have the ladder, right?
We don't have anything right now.
We got rid of it.
Yes, it's down in Plainville, and it's being we'll take the equipment off, but that's gonna go.
So it's out of
It's
service.
out of service. So we have we're lucky Linfield is building a new station, so they don't have room to store all their equipment. So they're like, well, you store it for us, you can use it, and that was a good handshake deal that gives us a little bit of a cushion if that happens. But the idea is, one ladder, obviously, because of the expense of it. But they have two engines, one within, a 10-year, and the other is getting probably closer to 20 years old as our backup if we have to go with. Because it adds continuity of operations if something happens or a big storm or something like that.
And what's the status of the Linfield ladder? Is it down in Linfield or is it here?
So our ladders in, it moved places, it's down in Stoughton, I believe is where our dealer is. We have a Linfield engine in our station that we're storing for them, but we also have the ability to use it if we need it.
It's in our firehouse.
Yeah.
So when will the truck that's in Stoughton come back?
That probably won't be, that's gonna be part of the deal with the ladder truck, that's the one that's getting turned in for the
The
50,000.
Okay.
Yeah, so our ladder truck, they actually sent a updated picture of it today. And it should be completed in January, but because it was a demo truck, they have to hold on to it to kind of do look at the shiny red truck to some other people that are looking to buy one, and then we should have it by the end of August, end of July, August 1st at the latest.
Yeah.
So a lot better than what we thought was gonna be 3 years by being able to get a demo, so.
And how old is the old ladder truck, the one that's being?
That is
the
a
emission-
2001. So 22 years,
And how old's our pumper? It's like 10?
2011, so it's 12. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's gonna be after the
The
ambulance, that will be the next bigger purchase.
No, it sounds good.
In terms of storage space ultimately for all this stuff.
That's this plan, we can store, anything more, we can't. And then the other thing I'm hoping for is, this just, I wanna take credit for it, but I can't. The fire chief in Essex and I got together and we said, well, if we have any smoke in the building, will you send your ladder truck to us in the interim automatically?
Yeah.
And then in return, if you have smoke in the building, we'll send a pump, because that's what we have the ability to do. In doing that, that opens us up to some different grant opportunities, because since it's considered automatic aid, when we apply for maybe a new pump by grant, we can take all the square mileage in Essex, the mileage of Essex that's not covered by hydrants, that can all be calculated into our grant, so that puts us at a higher likelihood. It's not a guarantee, still, winning the lottery, but.
Now you should
Buy a
take
couple
credit for that.
tickets.
Take credit for genius.
Yeah.
Just a question, how do you repair this equipment? Can you do a lot of it in-house? Can DPW do it, or does it all have to go to Framingham or?
So it depends on
someplace?
what it is. So there's some rules and regulations regarding fire apparatus. So you have to have an emergency vehicle technician to do anything basically more than an oil change.
Mhm.
The manufacturer is Greenwood Services Engine One. They'll actually be up here next week. They come and they have a mobile truck that they pretty much do everything here that they can, unless it has to go and be put on a lift or something like that. Then it has to go back down to Attleboro. But for the oil changes and stuff like that, they do that. For our smaller vehicles, those the DPW's been awesome to work with. So they'll do those smaller vehicles and kind of cut down on maintaining costs.
I'm thinking, we take the 64 and 50 from the salvage. And we might wait for town meeting and talk about getting a second ambulance as opposed to this. I think that's the real need.
I don't agree with that,
We
you
might
know,
want to accelerate that from waiting 2 years.
I think it makes sense to have a smaller vehicle. I don't think you need two big ambulances, is my opinion. At this point in time.
What needs you recommend?
Well, it sounds like the need, this is gonna supplement because we don't have a second ambulance, and it sounds like we're better off accelerating the second ambulance. Because regional dispatch, our ambulance might be tending to stray farther. It might
But isn't,
increase the importance of having a second one, for,
So I mean, kind of my thought when I came up with this plan was my current SUV, and I don't want to speak out of turn, I don't have my glasses. Is 2018.
Yeah.
So basically, at the time the new ambulance would arrive, that would be either phasing out or being used for, we could trade that in or something like that. So this is purely to just get us over the hump until that new ambulance kind of comes in the meantime.
So when you do have that second ambulance. So what's then the focus of this SUV?
So the current SUV we have would be getting close to its end of
Okay,
life,
all right,
age out
understood.
type thing.
Thank you.
Unless we can find something that we could, we can limp it along for a second use, kind of, 3 years from now.
And how much does an ambulance cost? It's
Hold on a second.
500,000.
Yeah, 460,
Yeah, okay.
the 468, I think I sent the quote.
Yeah, okay.
So we already got a fifth of it.
And that's about a 14-year, 7 front, 7 back.
Yes.
That's fully equipped.
We have, that is equipped with the stretcher and the loading system, our medical gear, we just moved
just
that,
transferred.
yeah, exactly.
So under your plan, you're saying we need to fund $250 a year.
Up
Into
until
the-
the end of, towards the end of then you'll see the excess towards FY, I should have brought my glasses, I apologize. So once we get up to like FY 36, you start, you have a lot of, you can probably, tone it down or turn off the spigot. I try to be optimistic.
So it makes sense to me that when we do the capital budget, we try not to cut back on this number and keep the 250 in, and because we've been
Hold it.
varying it year to year based on.
We've been borrowing.
Sometimes we come in lower one year and made up for the higher a year or two later.
So just when the dust settles, let's say theoretically, we approve this, we get this SUV, we give Linfield back their truck, like, what will we have for vehicles?
So basically what you see listed here minus one SUV. So that gives us our frontline engine, a reserve engine, the ladder truck, which is always frontline for its entire lifespan. An ambulance, ideally one within 7 years of production, one probably nearing 14 years, and then the squad of the forestry truck. That's another one that can get pushed off because, knock on wood. I don't like how woods fires, they're a pain. Glossy just went through those, but that doesn't get used as readily. So extending the life of that
Typically lasts
vehicles, usually lasts long. It doesn't get as much abuse per se.
So engine, ladder, ambulance, forest truck, SUV,
No,
not in the near term.
One with a blown
One
engine.
Well, that one's
Yeah.
that's
So I took the plane.
and
The
2
plan.
SUVs. Currently. Short term, we're talking short term now.
I thought,
Short term, so one ambulance, 2 SUVs.
Oh, I thought you were saying at the,
I thought. when you
As the
said
dust settles.
And those can all
well, I mean,
fit
dust settle, I
upstairs
just mean
away
like
from the
Linfield's
flood.
got their truck back and, I mean, like 1 to 3 months, I guess, when dust settles.
so Linfield's truck will be here probably
Till August.
at least till August. Because right now, we only have one truck that, if that goes away, engine one's the only truck that can actually pump water for a structure fund. So that's, Linfield needed it back a couple weekends ago, and those are the things that I lose sleep over. Because if they go out in the middle of the night and that truck doesn't start, I know we're running probabilities and risk benefit, I lose sleep over that. Because I guess, they should have something, a backup plan.
Yeah.
So.
So the backup plan would be mutual aid, probably coming from Gloucester and coming from Hamilton and
If
in that
Linfield truck
really
wasn't
bad
there,
situation.
right now, the truck doesn't start, they just, Linfield, we have it stocked, ready to go, they can move over, be out the door in a 30-second delay. Other than that, we're waiting 12 minutes.
So the idea of having the SUV as an interim solution. Takes some of that pressure off the engine, which, ultimately once Linfield collects theirs back, that's our only engine.
Right.
So. Okay.
Yeah, and then the other thing is 79.2% of what we do is medical related. So that ambulance is running all the time. Like, again, if that SUV can take a little bit of the
Yeah.
weight off of that.
Yeah.
That helps as well.
Sure.
Do I have a motion
Uh,
to
I will
Approve.
recommend the 64,000 for an ALS equipped.
Article
fire
6.
department SUV.
Yeah. Right, he moved,
Oh, you moved?
You second?
I'll second.
okay,
I moved too slow.
any,
That's all right.
any more discussion? You ready to vote? Maury,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Dean,
No,
Peter,
Yes.
and Sarah votes yes. To recommend,
Right.
okay.
I just want to hear anything that you guys would like to see added to the reports that's in Monthly. Do you find those beneficial? Is there anything lacking that you like, geez, I wish I knew this?
I thought this one you sent for July through October was great.
Okay.
And I think it's. You know, I think it's great for us to see. That we're over on the overtime budget,
Mhm.
but you know what you're telling us and you're trying to figure out. How to come to grips with it.
Yeah.
Whereas we've had issues in the past where it's just spent and we're not fully aware of it.
Since overtime has been such an ongoing. I saw an email that I think Greg Blue wrote asking to what we can look forward to in terms of. Overtime over the balance of the fiscal year. I didn't see an.
So I calculated out and I feel like a weather forecaster when I'm trying to come up with the number. So I looked at previous years, which aren't apples to apples because we haven't been fully staffed in previous years. So I expect a little bump in overtime during December, January, and the beginning of February, because 2 on paternity, 1 with a medical, and 1's at the academy. So that will bring us down a little bit. The one thing is they are spread out amongst the groups. So, hopefully that, that will reduce it. But after February, when people are back, I expect the overtime to basically plummet to almost nothing because we have the ability that somebody's out sick or on vacation. We just absorb that with the staffing. I think that's what we've been trying to get to for how many years to try to get there. So the number I came up with, just to cover what we're already overspent and to the end of the year was 50,000. And it could be 30,000 less than that.
But that's 50,000 for the fiscal year, right?
No, so that would be 50 additional to, the initial one was 30.
Yeah.
It was 30,000, the initial allotment of the overtime.
So 80 for the fiscal year.
Better than the 200,000.
I was gonna say, like, what do I compare that to?
We've been spending over 200, yeah, right, Greg?
Yeah, if we hit 100, I'd be shocked. I
So
don't expect that.
I have to look at it from a relative perspective.
Right.
It could be. Try hard, Mike. Well, try hard.
It's helpful having that information, understanding where everybody is, the fraternity and the medical. And those that are in training.
Mhm.
So,
How long do people get for paternity?
So they get FMLA, they get 12 weeks technically. I haven't seen,
Technically, they could take.
technically they can get 12 weeks.
Okay.
I haven't seen anybody take 12 weeks
Oh, okay,
unless they have sick time.
Yeah.
Because it's,
not paid, the people don't.
but public safety, you often have to backfill, so
Yeah.
that it becomes an expense.
Yes,
But
okay.
luckily, like I said, we're finally getting almost a full staff
Yeah.
once firefighter going gets back to the academy, so we'll be able to absorb those, no problem in the future. So,
Paternity leave is part of the union negotiation.
State-
It's actually-
Federal law.
Federal law, I don't know.
Federal.
Yeah. It's changed.
No, that doesn't mean they're gonna take the full 12
Correct.
weeks.
Because if they want it paid, they have to use their sick time, which a lot of people want to save the sick time if they get sick or hurt or something like that. So,
Have a sick kid.
When,
Kid, you better save up some sick time.
especially when they hit daycare.
When they're on family medical leave, do you know what percentage compensation they get from the state versus what they get from the town?
I don't know.
I don't think anything.
So family medical leave doesn't usually pay full.
Doesn't pay at all.
I thought it was 0, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Zero.
It's, it's, you're just using your own leave time, and once you burn through your own leave time, you still can have the time off, and we can't.
Just give
Yeah,
you.
unpaid.
It's your job.
It's
Yeah.
it just saves, it guarantees the job. Yeah, that's all it really does.
Yes.
Yeah, they pay the benefit.
Yes.
Right, there you go. So the benefits and your job at the end of it.
Okay. Do we have any more questions of the chief?
Well, thank you very much. It's nice meeting with people that are not.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Great.
Thanks, Dave.
I was gonna say the best part about the reports is we never got them before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, second best part is I don't have to say anything as the liaison update, because it's. over here. Shows correctly.
Well, I'm just thinking how nice in retrospect it would have been to get any kind of report with any kind of frequency, and now we're getting.
Right, yeah, a very
nice
complete
detailed
one,
reports
yeah,
with good frequency.
yeah.
Certainly hope we dig ourselves out of this apparatus situation in the fire department. I really is. I know we've got loans,
Expensive
borrowing.
pieces of equipment.
I think we're on the right track.
Just takes time. Okay, next article is Article 8. Which we said we were gonna make the recommendation on the town meeting floor. And there's now been added a $10,000 for expenses related to the use of the building. Can you explain to us what that 10,000 represents, Greg?
So basically utilities. for the
Okay.
building. It could also include rent.
Okay.
Depending on the lease. it will be.
So that's 10 grand per year.
This will be for the remainder of this year.
Do we have low cost lease amount?
I don't have a firm cost.
So that's 10,000 plus the lease
No, 10,000 is the total that will be allocated for this, rest of this
for
current year.
this. Okay.
So the current tenant is paying a little over 200 a month.
But, okay, it's not much.
And now
when you
it's for the
say-
calendar year.
I was gonna ask calendar or fiscal.
Oh, fiscal.
Okay.
Remainder of fiscal.
Fiscal year.
Yeah.
So until June.
Next
end of
year.
June.
And then what?
And then there's the new lease arrangement, which
So then we'll have a better number that we will seek for the April annual town meeting for FY 25. And we'll have a much firmer number based on a known lease and known utilities and known shared costs with other potential other users.
Alright, so this is a true stopgap and we really don't know what the world will look like after
We
June 30th.
don't know precisely what the world's gonna look like in FY 25. Depending
So-
on,
You have both ends of the spectrum, right? On the one hand, it could be a nice, another friendly, cheap kind of deal, or it could be like the landlord tries to gouge and.
so they've indicated that it would be very similar to the existing lease. They nailed it down, but they have said it would be a below market. Below market rate lease.
And would it be multi-year
Yes,
to give opportunity to
So they have
add
said-
space?
they said they would offer up to 10 years, a
is-
renewable of 10 years,
You said it's 200 a month right now?
to 15, something like that.
It's a little.
can you remind me how the building's used? I'm sorry, I'm a little vague on that. I mean, even now, I mean,
So right now, the Manchester Community Center, the
Right.
private nonprofit, is using the building for.
all
Very
sorts of classes.
different classes, different organizations use it,
Right.
AA has meetings there,
Okay.
Garden Club has meetings there. They have different programs, some of our council on aging classes
It's
are there.
anticipated that would be the continuing
That
pattern
would
of use.
continue, plus, the expanded use, we would anticipate, offering public restrooms. To be open to the public generally. We talked about having the harbor master have his office there. And better and easier, quicker access to the boat at Reed. And then additional, meetings and programs.
And now it gets used 75% of the time and.
No, I'd say it's probably 50%.
Does the lease come with, is there available parking? Does reserve for that?
Not specifically,
But it's
It's not
usually not an
reserved.
issue, right?
particularly now that people aren't commuting like they used to.
Right.
There's pretty good parking available. Commuters use the park.
Right.
And, that really hasn't returned.
And what was the projected cost? I can't remember to put the harbor master and restrooms at Reed Park. What type of number were we talking?
It was in the 500,000 range.
500,000 to do what?
Well, they want to demonstrate. That's-
Put in some bathrooms.
No, harbor master's office and restrooms at Reed Park. Whereas if we do it at the community center, we're not gonna spend 500,000.
I thought we were saying 500 grand to put bathrooms in the
Maybe
community.
I gotta
Yeah.
call Jake back, we need some of that AL.
It's part of the whole advertise there.
Spending a lot to retreat from the water, you know,
Right,
and, you know, we're talking about sewage treatment and all sorts of stuff getting back from the ocean. Why are we building on the ocean?
Right,
So
right.
this seems like a really good
Yeah.
direction if it can happen.
But in hard dollars, 500 grand over here versus 10 grand over here.
Well,
Well,
Is that what Article 11 is?
to be fair, it's gonna be more than 10 grand, but.
But a lot less than 500.
A lot less than 500.
Is that the price tag for
If,
Article 11? 500,000?
Yeah, that sounds.
Well,
low.
for due diligence, this is related to Article 11. The next
no, we're
one,
not getting to Article 11 yet. The price for Article 11 is 350,000.
okay. But before we approve this, would we want to know what, is there a specific plan for that citizen petition?
I'd
So it's
like
either
to,
8 or 11, you can't really do one first, can you?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, to me, it's one or the other. I know you don't want to talk about both at the same time, but to me, it's like someone has to pick one or the other.
I think we already voted on 11, right?
It
No,
didn't seem like a
we-
good idea, but
no, we decided to wait. Oh, 11, I don't know what we did.
we
I
decided
thought
they
we
were
took
related.
no position, but the warrant was printing saying that we did not recommend. So I'm not sure. What we did.
We were gonna make a recommendation on the meeting
Well,
floor.
we didn't have a number.
But there wasn't a number, you're
It
right.
wasn't the number
Right,
then.
but there were,
We talked about that there are implied costs, you know,
Right.
the legal costs and all sorts of other hidden
But
costs.
I received an email from Alan Wilson.
Yeah.
And the motion made on the town meeting floor for Article 11 will include a raise and appropriate cost of $350,000. So that's new information.
But so we don't know what our recorded vote was last meeting,
Well, that's why I have it on the agenda to confirm a vote.
because I thought it was to vote against, because I thought that was the one, Mike, where you were saying you didn't think we should take a position.
Right, I would say no opinion on both, but I thought I got outvoted 6-1.
I think
That was on the eminent domain discussion.
right, that's article.
Well, I don't think it matters at
Yeah, it
this
doesn't.
point, because it's a completely different article now, because it has 350,000 attached to it.
Okay, so we have to vote it anyway.
Right, that's what I'm saying,
Alright.
yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
so just with the caveat, if it goes forward, there is a possibility that the petitioners will move the path over. But you still should take a position on that one. on the whole one.
Alan told me we have to vote.
Question just on Article 8. If the lease goes through and building enhancements are needed in the space, can that be done by the owner of the space at their labor rate as opposed to
Yes,
the town doing it at our rate?
correct, because it's not our building,
Perfect.
so yeah.
Prevailing wage.
So what would, I know I'm talking total theory world and the probability of this is like 1 in a million, but just theoretically. If 8 gets voted on and passes, and then 11 gets voted on and passes, like, what does that mean?
So the selectmen are authorized to do either one. And it would be their decision
Okay.
as to which one to pursue.
Well-
But I think the other, if I may, the other key thing to consider here is Article 8 is the only option that addresses the concern in the short term. Article 11 is a long-term approach. You can't get any, I mean, Article 8 is the only short-term option to try and save what we have with the community center in the near term. You're not gonna go through an eminent domain process in, 3 months. Not gonna happen.
Okay.
That'd be 3 years.
Plural years.
But then does that mean, to your point, in the short term, the lease thing, right? But then, and again, this would assume both passes, which I'm sure is not gonna be the case, but just theoretically. Then the lease thing solves the short term, but again, theoretically, longer term, the select board could look to do.
Theory,
Bias,
Yeah.
yeah.
They really are a bit independent. But
Got
the
it.
timing on them is very different.
No, but in a weird way, both. I was thinking you had to pick one or the other, but in a weird way, timing wise, both can actually work, yeah.
Has something changed that leads the petitioner to maybe move the Passover? Has something evolved in the discussion about
so
the article?
just from someone who's been dealing with both parties.
Yes, yes.
The Article 11 has made, the potential of Article 11 has made negotiations more difficult. Um, It is not been received well by the association.
I see, I see.
Interesting.
So from my perspective, it's a fallback, but we don't need it now. We can do it at the annual if we
Got
needed
it.
it.
I understand your point. Yes.
So
Yep.
my preference would be to approve Article 8 and hold off on 11, but that's my.
I understand. I understand.
Or do it later into the lease if we have a 10-year lease,
Correct,
Exactly.
correct.
Yeah.
because things can change.
I mean, ideally, you get a 10-year lease, it's really favorable, build out the space, it works well, and then do another 10 or a 25, or just keep rolling that way.
I mean, the
I'm
intent is
pretty happy with that.
for now is just to rent it to the community center as they use it now, right?
No, and to use it for town purposes too,
Yeah.
Mixed
well,
use.
Augment, yeah.
Right, you have the
if
dual.
it's available. I mean, if you think about it,
It wouldn't be a turf war, would it?
no,
It's underutilized now, so let's try to
Yeah.
get it, yeah.
and you certainly could use it for more
And this is a yearly
Senior-
thing, so
senior center
I
activities,
I
you know.
agree with that. Cause it's in the plaza where a lot of them hang out and right across the street from the affordable housing for seniors right there, so. It makes a lot of sense. I vote we approve Article 8.
So that's a motion,
Yes.
Second.
any seconds, any more discussion? Take a vote, Maury,
Yes.
Mike,
I abstain.
Andy,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
and Sarah votes yes. Now, Article 11. So we need more discussion on this?
Only the print
It seemed
doesn't
premature.
recommend, right, and the current, the printed says not recommend.
Doesn't matter, we didn't vote
Right.
on an article that included a $350,000 number, so we have to vote.
Right.
Okay, because our vote is invalid because it's not what the motion's gonna be
I
made.
see.
Can we take no position?
Andy's made a motion.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was the
I
motion?
make a motion that we do not recommend
Second.
Article 1.
And Maury seconds. Okay. Discussion.
Yeah, just as a discussion point, I mean, I just, on both of these two, I just would prefer to take no opinion. I get that there's dollars and cents that are connected, but it's not as concrete to me as like the SUV, right? The SUV is concrete dollars and cents, right? 64 grand, gonna buy a truck, right? Da, da, da. These, yes, there is, but I don't know, it's like the parking spaces, you know, if you wanted to connect enough dots, you could make it financial. You could say, well, it's gonna bring in some additional revenue, there's gonna be more, you know, but there's some things that, I don't know. If it's not concrete enough, I would.
But
prefer to
this
say
is
no.
authorizing just to spend $350,000 of town money. It's an appropriation, like any other appropriation. So that's why I think
we
it's,
talked about this last time, but. My reason for voting against this is that I think it gives the town administrator more latitude in working on a lease. And we will have another chance at this at the annual town meeting in 6 months. If the lease. if the
It's premature, it
negotiations don't
clouds
go.
Greg's negotiations.
Exactly.
any more discussion? Ready to vote?
Yep.
Maury,
Yes.
Mike,
I'll abstain.
Andy,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Dean. Peter,
Yes.
and Sarah votes yes. So that is to not recommend. Okay. Anything else on the warrant?
Assume that you will be speaking, if there's a question about finance committee.
Yeah, I've talked to Alan that I thought I might speak at the beginning to talk about the impact on the tax rate. I'd like to know what the 350,000 impact would be to the tax rate, but he asked me not to speak on specific articles up front and to speak as each one came up.
So, rough numbers, it's about 125 basis points added to the tax rate,
1.2,
1.25%.
1.25%. Okay, that's it. And that's what I'll say when we get to that, if we get to that article, I'll say it's gonna add 1.25% to the tax rate.
And is that, how concrete is that 350? What is that based on? Do we know?
I don't know. Well, it's not a very concrete.
Exactly.
I was gonna say, given that location and real estate and potential, I
I
would say
don't know
that
how you
number's
get it for
grossly low,
350. Yeah,
Plus acrimony.
like 2x or 5x.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's me.
at least 3 times.
Based on what stuff is going to. Oh,
It's got a lot of views.
yeah. But it makes a lot of sense to me to put the harbor master there.
Yeah.
At a much lower price. Now we have both, we have the first quarter report, which I sent out a while ago. Andrea sent an email this afternoon saying she couldn't make the meeting. I don't know if people have questions. I mean, the thing that I noticed certainly was the fire department overtime, which the fire chief has addressed. And then revenue,
You almost have to compare it to last first quarter's report to see.
right, which is on the right side, yeah. You know, and I guess we didn't get meals tax last year. So the meals tax looks like we budgeted 70 grand for revenue and we've got 34 grand, but I suppose a lot of it comes in the summer. Probably,
Is that a glitch? We truly didn't get any last year, that quarter.
Yeah,
Did we not have a tax?
something-
That's
That's not right.
That's not possible.
Yeah.
That's not right.
unless it was a timing issue, when didn't we implement it July 1st?
We had the meals tax. It was the.
You're thinking the short-term rental.
Okay.
Short-term rental
Not
tax.
meals tax has been around, like,
Well,
right? We've had meal
Yeah.
tax for years.
no, not for the town.
No.
No,
We've had it for a little while.
yeah, but that's a relatively recent thing we added.
Before I got
Recent.
here.
We should have some last year.
Okay, okay.
I'll have to check with that.
And then the short-term rentals is 19 grand. Than last year, because we didn't have it, right?
There's an item down at the bottom, that's called miscellaneous
Yeah,
rec / non-rec pilot. It looks like it's brought in about 200,000 on a budget line of 58,000. I'm curious what that is.
did that include the FEMA money? No, we didn't get FEMA this quarter, did we? No.
There's a red thing where I can't get the comment to come up,
Oh,
you know?
Yeah. Oh, 180 from sale of a fire vehicle. Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. I mean, everything else looks like, you know, it's on track.
yes.
You know, calendar wise, rec is way ahead, but of course, we're done with the beach for a little while. I did have a couple questions for you just on the expenditure sides. A couple things look like they were kind of out in front. I'm sorry, let me get to expenditure.
There's a number of things that we pay at the beginning of the
Prepay.
fiscal year. So,
Information technology, for example, looks like it was a little ahead of. Assessor's expenses, I presume those are all like, pre-purchases of software, pre-purchases of things that
Yeah.
go forward.
Yeah, so, yes.
I'm sorry, I gotta take a counterpoint to what you just said. We're way ahead on revenue, right? I mean, even if I adjust out for selling the fire. Right, that is 150 grand,
180.
okay, I mean,
250,000 higher than last year. So if we take out the ladder truck for 180, we're 70 higher than last year in the first quarter.
That's why we
Right.
targeted 8%.
180. 835, isn't that 100?
No, I'm wrong. I'm at the wrong line, sorry. We're 1.1 million ahead.
I mean, just at a super high level, right? One of the biggest things is the motor vehicle excise, but that doesn't come in until February, right? So like you get a one big, you get a big
The
one,
biggest, yeah.
you get the biggest chunk then.
Right.
And so, like, I'd be
But-
overjoyed to be at 25%, knowing that that big chunk from the motor vehicle comes in February, right? And it's, you know,
But if you look down at the total revenue sources against the budget, we're at 26% this year to date for the first quarter, and last year we were at 25%.
okay, I was looking at that 36% in column G.
That's where I was looking
for
first too.
33.
I didn't get
I mean,
down
one
to
of the
the-
drivers, Mike, is recreation. I mean, it's budgeted at 290, but we've got 211 or 212 already, and I presume most of that's from the beach
Right.
and rental of like tucks and things that
Correct.
doesn't happen in winter, so. And we have a very short, we only have a part of a quarter at the end of this year,
Right.
and then it's done, and then we're into next year, so.
Yeah, maybe it's the 180, maybe that's what's screwing me up, but it's just,
It definitely throws that.
because if I take that 1035, if I take the 1035 times 4, right, that's. That is 4.1, 4.2 million. Right? But I guess I'm multiplying the 180. But then again, the excise tax isn't in there, so I don't know.
Yeah, not everything's linear in there.
That's the problem.
I mean, look at investment income line,
Yeah, that's up.
right? If I take that, call that 70 grand times 4. It's 280 versus 18, right? I mean, that's a big nut right there, right?
Investment income has been up and down a lot year to year, it seems to me.
Yeah, but in general, interest rates, as we all know, are super high, so. You know,
Right.
unless interest rates fall dramatically in the next 6 months, which I don't think anybody's forecasting.
Right,
You
yeah.
know, that 68 is probably,
There's a lot of
No,
fixed
I-
income if you go and look at the investment stuff.
Yes,
It's interest rate driven, it's not equity driven, I mean, it's a town, you wanna be safe.
right, yeah.
So,
right, and agreed into, interest rates are high, so.
Right,
You know, especially if you're on the short end of the curve, right? I mean,
Right.
geez, the money market fund pays 5% these days, whereas 3 years ago it paid 20 basis points, right? So, you know. I don't know, anyways.
Greg, on the expenditure side, I was just looking over at insurance. And like workers' comp, liability and unemployment are all. You think would be 25% of the way through the year, and these numbers are like 75, 99, 60%.
Those are paid at the beginning of the year.
Workers' comp is,
Workers'
Yeah.
comp is.
so that's, you're paying for workers' comp insurance,
Correct.
Okay.
Okay,
not direct pay, okay.
and unemployment, that gets prepaid as opposed to like. Part of your regular salary, I guess it's not that much, it's 2,000, it's not, it's a small number.
Yeah.
Probably figuring in overtime is probably what's driving that little number.
Is there anything that we should be looking at that?
I wondered why
concerns?
the sewer revenue is down so much.
Maybe a timing issue.
Cause last year in the first. Oh, no, I'm wrong, it's up. I'm looking the wrong direction. Yeah, it's 204 this year versus 149 last year in the first quarter, yeah, no.
Scratch my head over that one.
Yeah. And water's up.
I mean, this is not a topic for tonight, I'm just gonna throw it out there just so it, you know, sticks on the wall, but. You know, me and Tom went to this annual finance committee thing this past Saturday and, you know. Learned a lot about forecasting and budgeting and, you know, there's definitely. Many different ways to do it, you know, and there's a lot of other towns that are not anywhere near as conservative. As we are, so. I just wanna get into that when we get to that point of the budget for next year.
You tried to
I
make
did
some
have-
headway this year.
You know, there was, the town of Medfield put up their thing and they showed local receipts and they took a 5-year trailing, they did an average, they actually showed an increase. Like for the forecast, and I was like, wow, I didn't know you could do that. I thought you had to take actual, take a huge chunk off, so.
Question for you, Mike, do they have an FP&A function in your staff? That's who would do it in a corporation, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. But it was, I had the heart to heart with this, it was the assistant town administrator, I had the heart to heart, and
No, yeah.
I explained how we did it, and he said, and I was just like. You know,
I think, you know, one of the things I've been wondering is, you know, what are we asking our accounting staff to do versus FinCom, and that may be part of the discussion you want to have. It's not clear to me who's responsible for FP&A. I mean, I feel like it's FinCom, but should it be, right?
I'm 100, I mean, obviously in the private side, you're 100% right, it's an FP&A group, I mean, this is obviously a much smaller organization, so.
But still. you
But
gotta-
yeah, no,
we got
conceptually-
big expenses coming up
Absolutely,
based on that facilities plan and.
I guess to use your metaphor, I would assume it's kind of like, you know, the FP&A group is the one that does the forecast, but if the CFO says.
Right.
You know,
That's what I'm-
this is the assumption for revenue, then that's the assumption for revenue, right?
Right.
Okay, is that enough on the quarterly report?
I did have one more
Yeah,
question,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, under MERS school district. Is that, we obviously vote an amount at town meeting. Cannot exceed that. But it looks like the payments are a little ahead, is there a very prescribed? Payment process to the district from the town, or is it a lump sum, or how does
It's
that?
supposed to be monthly.
Okay, so maybe this is just a timing thing, it looked like it was
So it may have, I wonder if it has the last month of last year
probably
and
does.
2 months of this year? Could that be possible, or are we paying at the beginning of the month?
So it, you know, it's basically 16.5 million. And we're currently at about 5.348 million. So we're about 33% of the way into the payments. And I normally wouldn't, we'll look at 33%, but because these numbers are so big, but I presume it's a cash flow
It's
challenge.
so it's got the 5 months rather than 4.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
4 months instead of 3.
So it's including October payment?
Right, it's probably including.
But it'll cap out at what we voted at with the
Yes.
town meeting, 16.5.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last quarter should be only 2 months, then.
Okay.
It works right.
Yeah.
In a good year. Okay,
So in terms of the expense side, the only thing, what is there for red flag? If any?
OT for fire employees.
OT for fire boys.
Those are the 2 flags I have right now.
So it was 80 grand year to date fiscal for fire. So what I heard.
now additional
Additional
50 grand for the year, which will total 80 grand.
Right, I'm saying we're running at 80 for the fiscal year,
Oh,
Yeah.
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 Sorry.
trying to budget the full.
That's half what we had.
And then police,
Police, you know, they have just under 100, they 120.
fiscal year to date.
No, I think it was like 30.
Are our new employees up in the police?
Yeah, where were you on hiring and start?
Yes,
They're all up to.
Police is at
he said that the
93.
other night. He, I think he's got a couple going to the academy. I shouldn't say it.
I'm glad we were
And
able
is
to do
that right, what's the overtime dynamic that's happening in the police? I understand the fire.
So, you know,
I think I just found it, so
About
30,
40.
yeah, so if I do 37 times 4, $150,000. So they're looking to be 60 grand higher for the full fiscal year compared to the 93 they budgeted going into it.
I don't think I don't think it'll be that high, because again. Summertime is a much higher
Like that.
OT usage, and then right around the holidays is a very high OT spike. So it's not.
It's not linear, yeah.
Okay.
So there's like a July 4th in it.
July 4th is a big expense.
Yeah.
The
With the
point you were
parade.
making, it was of concern because it was running higher and faster. I'm talking about police now,
Right,
right?
so that
Red flags.
93 or 4, whatever we budget, really accounts for just anticipated sickness, and it doesn't account for someone getting injured, it doesn't account for someone going out on maternity or paternity leave.
And is that what's driving?
But if you look,
Overage at this point?
if you look at last year, they had spent 47 grand, and this year it's 37
Well,
grand.
he's running better than.
So it's not as bad as last year.
Well, but some of that should be expected, right? Because
Yeah,
we hired,
that's what I'm trying to drive at.
hired
I don't know.
Well, but
So-
the additional hires, he doesn't have to backfill as often.
so
I
is
see.
is the timing of all those new hires, did it happen roughly like on
So we-
schedule or?
We're getting there, so he's got a couple more that have to complete the training.
This was all foreseen, so we just didn't budget enough for foreseen events in police overtime.
You might have been optimistic.
It's depends on, who you hired, did they have to have the training, did they
I see.
not? It's a bit of a guessing game.
This year, we
When
might
you
want to
hire
be more
them.
conservative on putting some time in initially, so we don't have to go through this. But then you don't want them to be working towards it either.
Right.
It's simply the case, no matter how many police or fire personnel you had, you're just always gonna have some OT, like.
Yes. Yes,
Absolutely,
you always.
and they expect it, I think.
No, I
They
don't
look
think
for
so.
it, look-
I don't think so.
It's just the nature in terms of scheduling. If you always want a minimum on. Then there's gonna be some days when somebody's out, you gotta backfill.
But his scheduling was done in a way that,
It should help.
right,
Absolutely.
because he had some flexibility in his staffing,
And then once he gets that full complement,
right?
that will maximize the flexibility.
Right, that ties into the regional 911, because then there's more police on, right, so now it's not,
Correct.
there's two different, right, you have police officer versus dispatcher, and of course you can't interchange, but now you can, so.
So basically, he's got enough, if everyone is healthy and is on, everyone's trained, he has enough to have 3 on. For the day and evening shifts. And you only need 2, so he can, if one is out, you don't need to backfill. So that's where you have that savings in overtime.
Okay. that's-
So that 93, is that as good as it gets, so to speak? Like,
Yeah. That's about
Really?
as good as it can.
and for fire, what,
It's probably gonna be in the 50-60 range, is probably as good as it's gonna get.
But he'll be fully staffed, as we're just saying that sickness and other things just happen, and that's what drives that number.
Right.
but part of the difference, correct me if I'm wrong, with fire is, as chief develops some of the call volunteer, I would think that helps, right? Or no?
Not a lot.
No?
No. So the call is really gonna help just beef up for a bigger event.
I thought it could be used to cover,
Again, it's not used to cover regular shift.
like I know historically it was.
So you might be able to get a call person to do a 10-hour shift.
I see.
You're not gonna get them to do a 24.
Yeah, no, fair enough, yeah.
So.
No, I'm not saying magic wand, I just thought it would help cut into that.
Yeah, it'll help cut some, but it's not gonna eliminate.
Looking back a year or two, the OT for fire was running so high, we were talking about cutting shifts a little bit.
Mhm.
We're not in that mode right now. We're maintain full staffing and let the OT build as it.
No, fire isn't, they're going down to 3 people.
Yeah, we go down to 3.
They can go
Okay.
down to 3.
We don't, yeah,
They're
we don't
staffed
have to.
for
Yeah.
Go to 3 before they,
Before they start doing OT.
yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
And I think this chief has been consistent with that.
No, sounds great. I
Yeah,
hate to bring up the past. I just want to understand where we were in that decision tree.
because I think a lot with the prior chief, we were staffed for 3 and he did OT for 3. Didn't drop down to 2, which had been
Right.
done before. Yeah, that was the challenge. One of the challenges. Okay, we done with the report?
Yeah.
Okay, next item was, do you have any financial updates for us that we need to know about?
No, but you may not have heard that we did receive the MassWorks grant
Oh, I saw that in the paper,
Or-
yep.
for the CST utilities, so the water and sewer extension. That's a $3.5 million grant that'll help
That's great.
pay for, not all of it, but the bulk of that extension. And then CST will pay
And it's
the,
going under the highway by Forest Street.
yeah, so it's extending it out Forest and Mill. Underneath the highway.
And does that grant cover any of the work that we need to do? It's my understanding we have work to do too.
There'll be some road patching and,
Oh, okay, okay.
yes.
Well, didn't we use ARPA funds to look at putting a whole third loop out to East Manchester? Like, and wouldn't that be one of the routes we can go out? Like there's Summer Street, then we were gonna do something out towards,
Ancient County Way.
yeah,
And then out over the Plum Hill.
Yeah.
And down,
yes.
so that is on the list of desired projects,
We actually
No.
advanced the design on that, didn't we? With the-
yes. But we haven't funded the actual
Right.
construction.
Right. But that would be a priority since it's already designed now.
So I, other than that, really your quarterly report, which you.
Next item is the capital budget. Back to this again.
So one thing I want to get to you, and it's just.
You had a crazy day,
Too crazy.
Just like me. but I got a ZBA decision filed.
Yeah, so did I, with the SLV.
And then Beals and Thomas.
It took up most of the day.
Yeah.
So, Chuck has been working on a funding plan for the PFAS. That would be based on basically a surcharge to each customer based on the size of their water meter. And the bigger the meter, the bigger the surcharge would be.
You're not talking about size of meter, you're talking about usage.
No, I'm talking about size.
Size of meter?
Wait, what?
Size of the
Well, it's a
meter.
4-inch pipe or a 2-inch.
Half inch, inch, 2-inch.
Is it in layman's terms residential versus commercial or no?
No,
Seems
Well,
like it.
different residences will have different size meters.
Because the usage is different.
Yeah, bigger houses have bigger meters.
Yeah, normal household use might be a
but then
3/4
why
inch.
don't you do it based on usage,
Yeah,
not size of a pipe?
Yeah.
Well, you can.
Well, we're doing
Uh,
that too. We've raised
but
the
it's-
rates 5% in the past couple of
That
years.
seems-
So I'm
So
confused.
one way is to just raise the rates across the board and it's based on usage. This. By doing it based on meter, it's a set fee, you know, you're gonna pay it. And it's,
So in theory, someone that has a larger meter but lower usage could be paying more than someone that
Yep.
has a smaller meter and higher usage?
Yep.
potentially, I mean.
Well,
that
the
would be pretty
snowbirds might
unusual.
have something to say about that.
Well, I mean, there's houses out on the point that, only get used for parts of the year, so I see that.
I wonder what size pipe I have. I've got 2 meters.
Good.
Two pipes?
I guess so.
Charge
I mean,
twice.
This is a
Okay,
counter
yeah.
argument.
So-
Why wouldn't you do like a 10-year,
Log down and-
10-year average of usage or something?
I'm sorry,
I was gonna say, why couldn't you just do like a 10-year average of usage?
there's lots of different ways. I guess my point is,
Okay,
the bigger, the broader discussion. We can present you different models,
A treatment
Uh,
plant.
but there are ways to fund the PFAS needs without hitting general taxation. Obviously, it's perhaps, left pocket, right pocket, it's all the same.
I disagree, it's not, it's different, right?
Yeah.
Cause someone, like you said, if someone's a snowbird.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
they're not using anywhere near as much water than a family of 6 that's year round, I mean. it's-
Right.
Yeah, I think our big question is just why isn't it usage versus pipe size?
Yeah.
And then that's all the real
Yeah,
question.
yeah, and we can model.
I mean, there's also the broader question that solving the PFAS problem makes the town a more desirable place to be and raises everybody's real estate value. But if you have a well, you wouldn't be contributing to this at all under that model. So I mean, there's a whole bunch of different ways to look at this, and normally I'm just saying whatever, but it's a $25 million number. Big recollection here, which is a big.
So we were responding to what we heard was a pretty hesitant reaction to bonding 50 million, all on taxation.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to look at different ways.
It's good.
Yeah,
We-
no.
We think that we still feel pretty strongly that both the DPW and the PFAS issues need to be addressed soon.
Well, they don't even know the
Um,
parameters yet on PFAS. It's still a moving target,
it's not settled.
right?
I think it's a pretty safe bet that we're gonna have to treat our water.
At
for
some
PFAS.
point.
But I agree wholeheartedly that that's a better way to do it than just general taxation, because at least you've given people a choice, and obviously there's no one that can go, I'm never gonna use water again, that's not realistic, but, right, if you put it into the water
Dig
rates.
a well.
If you put it into the water rates, there's things people, right, they can be more efficient on water, or they can get a, I don't know, efficient washing machine or.
Right.
Whatever, they can buy bottled water the rest of their life, right, at least you have choices, So I think that's a much better way to go about it.
So when we did the water treatment plant like 20 years ago, was that just a bond and taxation? Yeah.
It's like
Just
just
if you think about the numbers, if you look at 25 million, you think about roughly 2,500 households,
Yes,
do the math.
right.
This is gonna drive people to call, Charlie Rollins and say, put a well in for me. It'd be great for their business, but. I think we could have a lot of people saying, I wanna put a well in.
Are you
But okay,
gonna
but so
fund
like, so what?
100% of it?
I'm curious where you're going.
Well, where I'm going is we all benefit.
By the way,
from
I have a well, so.
No,
I should throw that out
and
there.
we don't, but that's not why I'm discussing this. An enterprise fund runs because we have a certain volume of customers and size to the whole thing. You get people leaving the enterprise fund because they're dealing in their own well because of a cost item that comes along. That, I don't know where we fit in what scale or magnitude do you need to run a water treatment facility in this town, and at what point does it become?
But could you have a happy medium and do some through a surcharge and some through taxation, through bonding?
I feel like
Wouldn't
we,
be hit so hard.
Certainly can. There's lots of options. There's all kinds of permeations here.
And I mean,
I celebrate looking at the options. I'm sorry if I'm just jumping on all.
well, we certainly have taken preemptive action. We've raised the rates like 5% in the past couple of years, and we have like 3 million in the account now building. So I mean, that could go a long way. Well,
No, we've
The
been using it,
savings-
no, we've used it the last couple of years.
well, the balance showed 1.9 and 1, so
We've been drawing it down.
anyway, it's. So we have the PFAS, that's.
I think you're in support for looking at the options.
Right.
I think if there are questions about the options, we're looking.
It's okay.
Thanks for clearing things up.
Stimulate the discussion. So,
Sorry,
no, it's fine.
crazy on this.
I thought there would be different reactions to it. That's what we need to hear. We need to flush it out.
But we'd love to hear more as it comes along.
Are there strings attached to this 3.5 million grant, or it's just good, you're developing the economy?
Yeah, no, it's pretty free and clear.
Yeah, nice.
I mean, obviously CST is obligated to follow through on the job creation
Yeah,
Right.
right.
and that sort of thing.
how does the timing work? Meaning like,
What are we
I'm
talking
not
about now?
asking
Are we
the,
back on,
Utilities under.
are
the
we
highway.
talking about the 3.5 grant, or are we talking about
It's the water.
the things?
I'm
that
talking
is-
about the pipes to go to CST.
Oh, okay, the
And-
3.5 million grant, okay.
And I know there's no date, there's no, right, I'm just saying conceptually, which one happens before the other, or do they happen concurrently, or, in other words, you know, assuming CST passes and gets approved, blah, blah, blah. You know, the day that they break ground on that building is when we're breaking ground on the pipes, or no, we gotta be breaking ground
They're
on the
doing the
pipes.
pipes. They're doing the pipes.
But we're getting a grant. to
No.
do the
Be
pipes.
water,
It
sewer,
goes to
electric,
CST.
it's gonna be a
The
lot of
grant
stuff.
goes to CST.
We have to do a segment of the pipe.
Piping up to a certain point and then they take it from there under. 128.
That's the big property outside.
I thought it was.
The grant is not a check to CST, is it?
No,
Yeah, that's what I.
But isn't that offsetting what CST is paying? I mean, that's what England had been talking about was a,
That's the dream.
So it certainly helped, yes, it reduces CST's costs.
okay, okay.
But the pipes are gonna be the town pipes, so the state gives a check to the town takes the money to do the pipes, and it's the town.
Yeah, but if we didn't do the pipe, CST would have to do all of them.
Yeah, and we.
It's
probably
enhancing our
obligated
limited
to
commercial
tax
district by putting utilities at the edge of it, and then somebody picks it up, CST, and uses it.
So just,
or carries it on.
so back to my question, would we have to do all that like 6 months before they break ground on their
No.
build? No,
We can.
You do it concurrent,
And hopefully.
you just have to do it concurrently enough so that when they're like ready to turn on the light and have employees go in, obviously by that point.
Yeah,
It's gotta be 100% good to go and water flushing through it.
high project would be quicker than their
Yeah, yeah.
construction project.
I can tell you that CST has a application before the ZBA for a variance that's coming up in November. And a variance is good for 1 year. So that they need to break ground within 1 year after the variance is issued and decision written.
But to your point, the amount of time it'll take the town to do the pipes versus the amount of time it'll take them to do their building soup to nuts is obviously,
We'll be done before then.
And we got
There's an
Forest
incentive
Street
to
all
get
nice
those
and buttoned up.
occupancy permits, start charging taxes.
So we won't be paying anything for that work in excess of 3.5 million. CST will pick up the difference. That's what was my
For
understanding.
the pipes, yes, there may be some road patching. roads
Okay,
to-
yeah, okay.
Road resurfacing money, cost that we would get.
Okay.
it's still roughly 1.5 million a year, we think. Property tax potential revenue.
Yes,
Starting FY.
When it's submitted to the planning board, CST will be providing a financial analysis. And I weighed in with the planning board that the finance committee would be able to review that analysis and work with town departments and decide whether it looks valid to us.
But the math, high level is, you take the assessed value
Right.
of their total building, compound, estate, whatever word. And then, right, assessed value, mill rate. You end up with that annual dollars per year, right? Yep.
And as part of our financial review, we would need to validate with the assessor what the assessment would be. Rather than just take their assessment.
How does that work for commercial, like,
No clue. I don't know if our assessor knows.
I think lab
Like
like
space-
for residential, it's gotta be such a, you know, tight
Yeah.
formula, right, that like, it's almost like the assessor's hands, I'm sure, almost tied in terms of the residential, but commercial.
commercial, you have to open up the books,
Oh, really?
You gotta
look at their accounting.
look at their financials,
Just
right?
look at their financials.
it's a
Okay.
third party assessment. We'd have to engage somebody to.
But not necessarily, there's forms
They
that
could
they have
just
to
give
fill
us,
out.
they could just give us their P&L income statement balance sheet.
Yeah, but I guess, do we, so.
I don't think we need to worry about that now.
Fair enough.
Let's wait and see what they provide and see whether we feel
Yeah.
But you can get a pretty good bandwidth on it.
capable
I
of
mean,
not analyzing it.
you know the square feet that's being proposed.
Yeah.
And you know the cost per foot of building lab space, and there's a lot of data points in Massachusetts right
Right.
now on that.
Right.
You can do a simple. Back of the envelope, it's gonna get you pretty close.
You have their current properties.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we look at what they already have in there.
Exactly.
and Desiree and-
There's more than a handful of commercial real estate brokers in this town too, they could probably,
Weigh in.
it's for sanity, sanity, high level.
Right. I don't expect them to be pulling a lot of strings.
I guess what I'm, so you were asking is, they're gonna pay and I look at it high level, and if they're gonna be paying, $1.5 million a year, I don't wanna nickel and dime them for 20 grand of paving or whatever,
So in terms of capital,
Yes,
I think. My sense was people were concerned about the numbers, in
Yeah.
terms of the size of the numbers. I think. That, you have a heart to heart about how much you're willing to spend. On these capital projects and what makes sense to you.
Well, we did 4 million last year and we're looking at 13 million this year. Is that the jump that we're? Roughly,
Well, that includes the bond.
Right.
Of almost 10 million, so. And that bond was earmarked towards. Significant upgrade to the sewer plant, 4.1 million. And then, another 5 million. For the PFAS and water works. Now we could slow that down a little bit.
So just as a question, if the 5 million for PFAS was pushed out 12 months. Does that create a disadvantage in the bonding? And what, better, like, with grants and other things we're doing. Does that put the town at risk if we slow that down a little bit? And let the DEP and catch up with hard and fast rules and numbers is.
and holding the companies liable.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like we're kind of in speculation mode a little bit, and, waiting to see what. The authorities do. And, but.
So I wouldn't put on hold the analysis. But you could slow it down. You don't need to, we should have Chuck with us to have this in more detailed discussion, but. I think we would be fine to cut that 5 million down back. I wouldn't eliminate it.
So if you did like, say, I'm just throwing a number out, like 500,000 or 750,000 and push the remaining 4 million plus out 1 year. Would that put us on the radar in a bad way with certain agencies and other things, or?
No, bad way. What are you thinking?
No, I'm just wondering, I keep thinking, are all the other towns in Massachusetts looking at this the way we are and saying, okay, Hamilton, Wenham, are they putting 4 million on their capital budget? And is Springfield putting 160 million on their budget, whatever it is? Is everybody behaving this way?
That's what at the tail end, you just like, are we at the front of the pack? Are we like the first in line of this marathon? Are we in the middle? Are we behind?
We're not at the front of the pack, at the very front. We're
Number two.
well, so there are communities that have had much higher numbers and have had to go full steam ahead with the treatment. So there are communities that have already implemented PFAS removal.
Can you just name if you know of any? Okay.
I don't offhand. It's a hand.
Okay. A handful out of the 351. Okay.
Like, you
But
call who was sitting next to me on the table at that finance committee meeting,
Dennis, it was town of Dennis.
Dennis. Do they have, he didn't even know what PFAS was.
Yeah.
You never heard of it.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, because there's quite a bit on the case.
I was like, yeah, I'm familiar with the case.
No, but yeah, I think now I know why, because now I remember, I think he said the percentage of homes in Dennis that are on well is like 98%.
Okay.
So that.
well, they don't have a water system.
They don't have a water system.
That's
so that-
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it looks like Air has one. under construction, Barnstable has one completed or portion of one.
So just to make sure we're comparing apples to apples, I take your point, we're not at the front of the pack because there's these other towns that have much higher, i.e. more dangerous readings. And so therefore had to be at the front of the pack, kind of sort of. What I'm saying is, when you apple to apple us, meaning other towns with similar readings to us,
I would say we're ahead.
we're ahead.
We've been a little more proactive on it.
So our population of comparables is not like Boston. And it's not towns that don't have official water systems. So it's not 351 anymore. It's some portion of small towns
Small water
with
systems.
small water
That's
systems.
not connected to MRWA.
So that's important to understand here.
Like who's some good, to your point, like is Hamilton Wenham a good comparable?
Andover just is not on MWRA.
They're ginormous, I don't know.
They're big.
Yeah.
Hamilton Wenham, Essex, Topsfield,
Middleton.
Yeah,
probably.
again,
Middleton.
Well, It might be on MWRA, I don't know.
Harvard, Bolton, Stowe, places like that. Not Boston,
Right.
not Cambridge, not,
no, okay.
yeah.
I mean, Ipswich might. be
And then,
one.
then you have to see what are their levels, what are their readings.
Right, but I feel like that's what we kind of need, right? Like I wanna compare us apple to apple, right? Like a similarly
It
sized,
would
similarly
be helpful to
reading.
understand who the peer group is on this one a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, ultimately, we're comparing it. The levels that we're measuring and the standards that are set.
Yeah, but
Why does it matter what other towns are?
Because
Because it's how much money we spend, how fast.
Yeah, I
And that's
get it.
what I'm driving at is, do we need to spend money fast or can we wait till the dust settles a little bit and figure out how to spend?
Well, we're not gonna get any windfall from it.
yeah, but how do we know what we need to do if we don't even know what the regulations
It's
are?
kind of,
My
There's other
feedback,
towns that have had worse readings, so they had to do stuff, and that makes
Because they
sense.
failed the state.
But
Right, no, I get it. Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
if there's other towns that like look like us, have similar readings, and they're just kind of aiming to be middle of the pack, well, like.
And the last status we had was that the Lincoln well was just, a pitch under the 20 parts per trillion. We were at like 19 was our high rating.
Yeah.
Whereas the
Gravel.
Gravelly Pond was lower and so that was okay, but we were expecting there was gonna be a new state standard that was going to.
New federal
lower than
standard.
the Federal.
Yeah,
and that's gone to 4. So.
but we don't know that.
We don't, and we're waiting to hear if that sticks.
Yeah.
So
Because we
so
don't
I
know
guess my
public
position on this is
safety.
tempered a little bit by, we're not comparing ourselves to 350 other communities in Massachusetts. We're comparing ourselves to a smaller number.
Right.
And that is a different discussion than what's Lynn and Springfield and everybody
Right.
else doing.
I mean, MWRA itself probably has, I don't know, 60 cities and towns. I'm just totally guessing,
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's a big number.
right? So they're like, you can't even
They
compare
have
them,
non-detect in the Quabbin. The Quabbin is very clean.
really.
And their ability to put in $5 million worth of filtering happens overnight.
Reach in your pocket,
Nobody
right?
notices. It just happens.
Walk around.
We're different,
Exactly.
fixed costs, variable costs.
So I could see waiting absolutely until the dust settles on whatever the new mandate might be that would
That's what I'm
bring into
suggesting,
Gravelly
but-
Pond. Cause that's affecting our strategy for
Right.
whether we would just only do Lincoln or do Lincoln and the Gravelly Pond separate or
Mhm.
tie them together with that expensive water line.
Right.
Yeah, the analysis that they had come in is leaning towards two separate. That
Oh,
the
that was the cost
benefit,
analysis.
yeah, the cost benefit analysis does not favor.
Cause that's a lot of pipe. That's gotta be up like 2 miles of pipe or something.
You're spending 10 million just for the pipe.
Yeah.
And for just from a redundancy perspective. It makes sense to not put all your eggs in one basket there, if I can make my metaphors.
Is it all about filtration or like, I don't know,
Yeah, it's all filtration,
it's all about the filtration?
carbon filtration.
That's why, and I think
It's an
how-
easy
how to
fix. We
activate it.
just don't have buildings big enough to house it.
they would have to,
Vessels.
they would have to construct something next to the Lincoln Street well.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
These filters are huge
Yeah.
and then you need a building to.
I could see in the long term targeting something filter where that green building is. Something in that area to do the, but for this year, I'm all in on the 4 million for the sewer. And that's another unique thing for us is I'd rather have Chuck and Nate concentrate on that.
Right.
I think keeping that sewer plant, getting the processed water running is a priority, and I think also long-term. The cheapest way we can dispose our sewage is to keep that plant. And we have to make that decision and let's get that thing running, so. I would much rather support that 4 million for the sewer plant and then make that the priority water project for next year. The PFAS, we'll have some money in there to keep it moving, keep up, but the 5 million that's where we have room.
There's another question, Greg, it's just, who's the peer group on this PFAS thing that we ought to be looking at? But also, what's the rate of technical innovation going on in it? And I don't know this, I mean, others probably do, but is in 2 years, I mean, we're hearing about
Really different.
nanoplastics and microplastics, nanoplastics crossing the blood barrier is a whole nother dimension, but that may be the big topic in the next 12 months. And so I guess what I'm wondering is how fast is innovation and solutions to solve this happening? And are the filters that Chuck and Nate are talking about putting in developed 10 years ago and nothing's been really happening and that's what everybody's doing? Or is it moving quickly and in 12 months, we might have a totally different solution to this?
My understanding the former, that it's
Okay.
it's pretty well established technology that hasn't moved a lot.
There's probably a lot of regulation to implementing it, so it doesn't move.
We put to answer that. No, but I think that's my I'm pretty sure that's the understanding that I have is correct. Yeah.
Is keep moving on, is Central Street ready to be bid?
No. We are still waiting for the chapter 91 permit. It's extremely frustrating.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's gonna slip.
It's about to slip. If we don't get that permit in the next couple of weeks. We're gonna miss next fall's window.
We're talking about the Central Street Bridge culvert.
Cause you can't do it during spawning season.
You can either do it over the winter or over the summer.
And this is just a regulatory slow process, or is there something larger about concerns or?
No, it's just bureaucracy not moving efficiently. And we've
Kind of
talked-
like my solar system.
we've,
State,
Actually was able to talk to the lieutenant governor about it and she rolled her eyes and said, let me look into it. Because I'm not the only one who has complained. She's heard it before.
Yeah.
state DEP.
So if, heaven forbid, it collapses, and we're in another world of hurt, should, I think I may have mentioned this before, should we be limiting the weight going over it in hopes of preventing a problem? And I don't know how you enforce that, but I think of Harbor Street, the Harbor Street Bridge that goes over the railroad tracks. I would think you're an idiot if you are driving a 20-ton truck over that bridge because it's a problem. Should we be thinking about something like that, or does that not even matter? Is it all underneath and it's not a weight
No,
bearing?
it potentially matters. The last inspection said it was holding up pretty well. But if that changes, then we potentially would have to put a weight limitation and detour the heavier trucks around.
So that's kind of my forte. That arch ring is very strong, but what's the Achilles heel of those bridges are the sidewalls.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the sidewalks keep a buffer up from traffic, so like a heavy load, I mean, that ring could take
A lot, okay.
a freight engine.
I look at the Noonan truck that unloads gas at the end of Pine Street, and it's got 3 wheels in the back.
Yeah.
And that's usually reserved for 80,000 pound vehicles, which is a lot of weight. But
And it's there once or twice a day
regularly.
and it comes up Central Street.
So whereas Tux Point, that's wood.
I wouldn't hang out under that Harbor Street Bridge.
Not a place to fish. Oh, the Harbor Street Bridge. Oh, yeah. No, that would be.
I won't let my Jeep, and I hope I make it.
Oh, Mike.
If,
So there, so I want to talk about one other.
Yep.
That was added, and that is the library work.
if they decided,
So they've applied, they're applying for a planning study. And the required match for that is $150,000.
I'm not
for
willing to
another
fund that.
study,
Planning study.
I'm not willing to fund that. I'm sorry.
What is the planning study?
So it's a process that's required to, in order to be eligible for the
There we go.
construction money. And so you go through, it's similar to an SBA, the school process. So you have to do an analysis of your needs and, you know, compare it to your community size and come up with a design of a expansion.
But according to the facility study, the library is a sufficient size for our town. So I don't see why we would even want to support an expansion.
Yeah, I'm.
That's my problem.
I'd like to see bathrooms upgrade, or whatever it takes to do that, I think that was a reasonable thing.
You know, it's just they go off and do their own thing and. You know, yeah, they got $500,000 from somebody, so now they're hell bent on doing an expansion, but that facilities report said it was bigger than you needed for a town with 5,500 people.
And it's
It needed to
also,
be, it was like 7,000, needed to be 4,000, so I don't know what the numbers were, but it was substantial difference, and they seem to want to be a senior center, you know, it's like. Everyone wants to be everything, and we don't need that many buildings in town. Being everything to everyone.
and at the end of the day, out of all these capital projects, we're gonna have to prioritize, we're gonna have to rank, we can't do everything all at once, and like, so me personally. My top two is the PFAS stuff and the wastewater, those, you know, other people can have different choices, but to your point, I'd put library above down here.
Well, there's wants and needs and we had that discussion with the select board and we. You know, Chuck's done a good job, I think, or the consultant's done a good job of taking the first pass. At what's a want versus a need, but then when you get into the next layer of each building and request, you gotta. You know, a lot of sharpening of pencils to. Go
Right, and we have to prioritize the buildings long before we start putting money into them.
Were we thinking that Tux is
study.
going next year, the rotunda?
Yes, we're hoping to get grant.
So we have that,
Just on the library, isn't the expansion, if it ever happens, a function of the space behind it becoming available? So
That's a
like,
real question mark.
that's a question mark.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I see this.
I think they've applied for money, I think.
They've applied for they've a process of applying. The deadline is May, I think.
Okay,
So at a very high level, they got 500,000 of
of a gift,
private money,
yeah, a gift,
but they wanna spend. What'd you say, 150?
10 million,
150.
10 million in fiscal year 2027.
Hold on, let me get there,
That's not an accurate number.
but they wanna spend 150 of town money. To apply for a grant, or no, to do a.
The required match to do your design, your planning and design analysis. For
An expansion.
That's
construction,
just the match.
Uh-huh.
So the total cost of doing the design study is. Make it up roughly.
Sounds like it's a million, no.
yeah, no, it's probably, you know, maybe it's a 50-50, maybe it's a 300,000.
Fair.
Three to 500,000 would be my guess.
So 300,000 to 500,000 just to do a design study. On a potential expansion.
Right.
Is that right?
yeah,
Great,
so that.
And then
So
that
that would-
potential
I
expansion,
think at that higher number, you would have full construction documents.
but how can you have
Easy
construction
target,
documents if you don't know where the expansion is gonna be?
They're gonna have to make an assumption.
and then the actual expansion itself would cost, I know there's someone who said 10 million in
That's what's in
there.
the
I think
capital.
it's, yeah. I think it's five.
So expensive.
Public to lot, yes.
Is there,
More than
is
a
there,
citizen.
is there,
Okay, wait a minute, one at a time,
Yeah.
please.
They would anticipate significant fundraising.
100%.
No,
can I ask, is the donation specific to an expansion project or is it just in general?
That's what they had targeted for. The donor did not specify.
Is that just theoretically, is that possible that 100% of the costs could in theory be covered by
Combined with the state grant, yes.
private donations from state government?
In theory, sure.
I'm up over that.
The original library was.
but,
Was it?
but, you know, they're talking about wanting donations for the senior center. I mean, how many things are you gonna fund with donations before your donations start running out?
So just as an outside observer, I
Yeah.
can make a comment. What feels different about this municipal process than private industry is that, you know, the first question, contractor will ask you, right, is what's your budget, right? But in the municipal world, it seems that people put forth their wants, without a limit. And then we spend an awful lot of time talking about how to peel back the wants. Right, or do those requirements trade-offs, and I'm just wondering, at some point, I think this is a great first step, talking about all of the capital at the same time, so you can really see the impact. But is there a way, Greg, for town staff, you know, when they're putting forth these requests, to think about it in the opposite way, right? You know, I want to do a renovation on my home, okay? How big of a renovation I can do depends on my budget.
Right.
Okay, I don't put together my entire wish list and then, you know, tell the contractor, go estimate that for me, and I'll go figure out how to get a second job and earn the money. I mean, some people may do that, but I would say the majority don't. And so what I hope to, as a resident, now I'm not speaking for the board, we haven't had this discussion, but just as a resident, I'm hoping to understand if we can lift the conversation. And this is where the FP&A comes in here, you know, the financial planning and analysis. What should our budget be, right, for capital? And I hope with this new process, we can kind of figure it out and flip the conversation.
I like your phrase, wants and needs. Wants and needs are two different things, right?
And it's not clear to me who pushes back on the wants, because I don't think that's Chuck's job, you know, necessarily, but it's gotta happen. And in a corporate structure, there's a structure for making sure it happens. And it's just not clear to me how that happens in the municipal world.
Not very well.
This
I'm
may also be
looking
a
for it,
discussion.
but right now it's just us, as the boards asking the question. These conversations should happen long before it gets to a board.
I
In
was
my
just gonna say, I mean, wants and needs, this may be sort of a thought process going forward, is what's the future role of a library? And our library seems to be expanding into a lot of
Right.
different things. But if you step back, you know, the high school has a library, Memorial School has a library, Brookwood School has a library, and we have a town library. So we have 4 libraries essentially operating. If the future direction is information availability and it's electronic, is there a way to do you always say like countywide pooling here
That's
and
the current state though.
do that? Because
We
you know,
already have it.
are we
I use the library
duplicating?
all the time.
Essex County.
And I book my requests, you know, I search for the books I want online, it's on an app on my phone. Sometimes they bring me the book from, you know, Merrimack Valley, it's a consortium. And we pay for that already.
I guess my concern is outside of the library materials.
Right.
You now have the library doing all of these little sessions for
They're not
kids,
meeting rooms.
for kids.
Right.
Over here, you've got the community center doing all this stuff for kids. And over here, you got the after-school programs.
Mhm.
I mean, how much stuff
So I think what
do
you're
we
saying,
need?
Sarah, is integrated planning around certain things, right?
Yeah.
One of them is meeting space. I hear that all the time, and I think that's what you're getting to. The other,
And
Thing I-
programs.
and programs, right? The other thing I hear is administrative office space, right? And to your point, how is the workforce gonna be different You know, we're gonna be building these new buildings that are supposed to last 50 years. Well, we're not gonna work the same way, 20 years from now that we do today. So how much administrative office space do we really need? And where should it be? And looking at taking what's in this first draft of a facilities plan, which is a great starting point, and looking at all the common elements across all the buildings, right? And seeing if we can, to your point, Sarah, have some efficiencies here, right? Because every building doesn't need the same type of meeting space and administrative space, and that integrated planning, I think, would be an excellent next step.
Thanks.
We're very
So-
fragmented.
So one of the challenges is that you have different boards, so the library trustees are separately elected by. And that,
And
that's part of the structure problem that we
Well,
have.
I would call it a problem because similar issues exist in the corporate world as well. But that's where making decisions through influence rather than authority, that model takes hold, right? And so it is still one town tax rate, okay,
Yes.
right?
Right.
And just like we work with the schools, we've got some challenges there. Library would be something similar, right?
Because
think
everyone
one
wants
of
to
the-
be all and end all there.
One of the challenges is the different entities all feel they have to have the appropriate space themselves to run their projects. And if we pulled the space constraint out of it and said, all right, we're gonna run all these projects in the gymnasium. And then every organization worked on the projects that were relative to them, but they didn't worry about having to build space for it. And maybe that's part of the direction here. I don't know.
Well, it's partly that, I mean, I've done these facilities plans for in a corporate environment. And one of the things that you would do though, is take a look at how people work. What's the work that has to get done? Because people work differently today than they did before the pandemic.
And this isn't going to how they work.
What I'm saying is,
It's not.
It's going to the various entities wanting to have widespread
No, I agree with that.
programs that may not be
I agree with that, but
necessary.
I'm just saying, when you
Right.
focus on the program space, you're gonna see certain things around meeting space. When you focus on administrative areas, that's when the work habits tend to be more important. So, but I think the gist of this conversation is it would be nice to take that facilities plan and pick out the common elements and see where we can gain some efficiencies.
Or if we're talking about the. Get this wrong, the Knights of Columbus or whatever that building. is.
Masonic.
Masonic, I always screw that up, sorry. If we do something with the Masonic or we do something with community center. Maybe the thought is, okay, if we are working on those spaces, could we make them more universal?
Right.
So that the library doesn't need to build bricks and mortar. They can take their owl demonstration to the community center and
Right.
fly it there. As opposed to having their own separate.
That's what I'm getting at.
And I'm sure Chuck and you were probably thinking about that, but, community space and how we use it. Might want to think about that plan.
It would make it easier for the residents. Actually, I just got an email from a resident yesterday. Because they listened to the select board conversation and they were saying, can't you guys pull together a list of all the meeting spaces in town and could we have a centralized scheduling system? I'm like, whoa, but it's the exact same problem from a resident standpoint. When they need meeting space, they don't know who to go to. We make it really hard. So that suggestion would, really help.
But we're not big in the library.
So Greg's got
That's it, thank you.
I have one more data for the drawing, but I don't wanna be that work.
The works is already mic'd up. It's easy to get to the point.
Wow.
Okay. Where do we go from here?
Are we done with capital or?
Are we gonna do Sweeney next year? Is that in the capital?
I'm sorry, what?
Sweeney? Is there any? Schedule, the park department is talking about.
Recreational,
So we have,
Sweeney. 500,000 for Sweeney Park bathrooms.
right,
but paid by CPC.
So that was the invitation.
They were talking
And
about doing the
one-
basketball courts.
I'm talking about what's in the capital plan. In fiscal year. 26. They've got 1.7 million for the fields,
So that's one number.
which paid for supposedly by CPC and a grant. And in 2026. 50 grand for plumbing at Singing Beach Bathhouse. That's the only thing under those are the only three things under recreation. But I do notice that field on Pine Street's being used,
Oh, yeah.
It is,
Great.
Yeah,
but Mascanoma Park is not being used.
It is on the weekends.
So I think Mascanoma had a lot of rain and then the carnival,
Carnival
which was
must have
great,
destroyed the
but I know
field.
it
Yeah.
set everybody off
It
for
set
a
it
week.
back.
Yeah.
It wasn't destroyed, but
Yeah.
it certainly set it back.
Yeah.
That was wet. Rainy Saturday.
Is the turf field at Sweeney a reality? I mean, is that? I see this 1.7 million in here next year, next fiscal year. Do we think that's reasonable? Are there permitting and wetlands and all that issues, or could that happen?
That's not a turf field.
Could it? Yes. Will it? Is another.
Um, Probably get.
Certainly,
CPC can't pay for a turf field.
they can't pay, they can't pay for the turf. They can pay for a lot of the other
Okay.
parts of it, with the turf itself, they can't pay for.
That would be about 400,000 or 500,000. As part of the term, based on what they paid.
Well,
Yeah,
Brooks Field was 800 grand.
That was replacing an existing turf.
Right.
Topic, that the actual construction of the turf field is a lot more.
I know, I don't wanna ask, so why is that? There's just some minutia in the charter or language of CPC funds.
It's a state.
You can pay for the turf, you can pay for the guys
They
to
can
truck
pay-
it there and dig the hole and.
You can pay for the parking and you can pay for the. Preparation, but you can't pay for the turf.
Just sod. You
Mhm.
can pay for sod. It's part of the green space.
It's a front to the preservationists, I guess, so they excluded it. So we swing.
Well, that number. The 1.7 million, well, actually, in ClearGov, there's $4 million that's listed.
Where?
In the ClearGov site
Oh,
for the capital plan.
I'm looking at what we were given.
They're 4 million?
Yes.
To figure out how to get into ClearGov again. Every year I get 3/4 of the way through the budget and say, how do I get into? ClearGov?
Anyway, even if it's the 1.7, that's gotta be based on a certain scope of work.
Yes,
So,
but they have Wesley Sampson's design.
okay,
with the
have we seen this
city
before?
on.
The design has been done.
Or is
for a
that
while.
recent?
I think you've seen that.
Okay. So much from there.
Are the neighbors gonna complain if the field's used more?
There is parking there, which is.
Yeah, but they're complaining about the pickleball courts.
Is that issue been wrestled to ground? or is
Nearby
that-
residents.
Oh, yeah.
Across the street.
Big time, big time.
No, but I'm just like, when I look at the pickleball court, there's no houses to the left, there's
Right.
no houses to the
Yeah.
right.
Side of the street.
get started on that.
$40,000 to
Always been-
protect the $20,000 court.
They're like metal pickleballs, like, I mean,
And they're swearing. There's too much swearing,
Sorry.
life has noise.
The place gets used.
Yeah.
right?
Certainly does.
Put it out by the firing range.
Yeah, where would you rather live, right? Next to pickleball or the, Hamilton, one of them.
Okay.
So and obviously the other big ticket item in here is the DPW.
Right.
That's the other big item. The facility plan, so to speak, that as the first domino that needs to fall. It's certainly the oldest and most tired building we have.
So we were thinking of a chunk for engineering this year and then the full nut for construction next year. Well, I'm saying fiscal year, so next.
Only 250 for this year.
Preliminary engineering this year and
So,
final.
so, yeah, so it's 250 for basically geotech and preliminary. And then,
So the 1.75 is for the
He pushed
beginning
that
part
off.
of construction.
No, he pushed that off to the next year, to 2027. There's nothing recommended for 2026.
Okay, I'm looking at an older version. So the 20 million.
It's
um,
now 21,750.
so I put it all together. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, so the 21,750 is out in 27.
That's a long way out. Well, I didn't mention it the other night, Greg, but. You know, the federal government is really using the 3D printing for garage buildings like that out in the Southwest. The technology is coming a long way. The buildings can be built in weeks instead of years. And by the time we start spending on that, you know, the tech is probably something we should keep an eye on, because that could be a considerable.
Yeah, when I was in Houston last February, we went to look at a house made with 3D printing.
They're big in
Very
Texas.
But it's, I
interesting.
mean, it's concrete, it's ideal for like a garage type environment. It's called additive manufacturing. All the manufacturers do it now, and you're adding layers of concrete. The robots just go around, and for
Yeah.
a garage, a simple garage type structure, it's ideal. And we just
Interesting.
need to keep it was on 60 Minutes like a few weeks ago as well. And some of the companies that are doing that innovation are local, even though the buildings are in the Southwest. So just something to keep on.
What's worst case scenario? If we just theoretically, I'm just saying, we just didn't do a DPW building. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, eventually that building is literally gonna crumble.
Yeah.
And what's in it right now? Like, I mean, because I see all the trucks outside unless there's.
Yes, the highway garage is the one, it's the
Cinder
concrete
block.
block building to the left as you go in, and that's where they do all the maintenance on the trucks. So there's a maintenance guy in there all the time, and then there's some other guys that are sort of coming and going. And then generally on the lot, they've got, just parked vehicles. They've got the sand storage building in the.
Yeah, no,
back.
I've been in there to grab the rocks out. I mean, that's why I'm saying
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
So that also is on its last legs, that salt shed. In terms of the structural integrity.
mhm,
Yeah, there was a frame member that got busted a while back, I think,
Oops,
yeah.
buy a backhoe.
Maybe.
but a salt shed is, we could call it a Quonset hut kind of.
Yeah, there's lots of different.
Yeah, that's not-
Yeah. Okay.
They have to, obviously.
But I think
Part of it's that.
part of the strategy here is also creating office space for the DPW, so that they're no longer here at town hall, is that true?
Which is,
Right.
gets to the wants and needs and the conversation on where does the office space need to be? Where does the meeting space need to be? That's where you think about the work habits. All of a sudden you start pulling people out of this building changes and the culture and the work environment changes. So these are things that we have plenty of time to think about. But when you get down to the next layer of planning on a DPW building, you gotta sharpen your pencils on the wants and the needs.
But I also would argue that your supervisors should be
The workers.
where your workers are, when you're
Frontline-
talking
frontline
that type of,
supervisors, absolutely.
when you're talking those types of workers.
But there, you reach a certain level of management where that is no longer the right place. So it's just something to talk through before you make decisions on expensive buildings. That's my own.
So I'm just curious about the DPW building. It sounds like it's being pushed out. Is that right? I mean, we're talking about Black Earth being out of there this spring. And potentially site prep happening, and I'm just asking because. If we
So I was-
delay,
I was delaying it basically to try to time it with the new revenue from CST. That was my rationale for stalling it a little bit.
But the other thing that's gonna come out of it,
Essex Elementary.
around that time is probably, Essex Elementary.
Yes, it could.
Yeah.
Or maybe that'll be delayed, but I don't know, I just,
Super bond.
I was just thinking, if we got the
Well,
DPW done. You know,
The reason he's got the PFAS in 2026. Right?
I
No,
did those two, no, I pushed that
no,
out
you
too.
push that out,
I
yeah.
combined
okay.
those two to have one
Yeah.
line.
$50
one
million
big-
bond.
right,
Again, those are all choices.
Let's focus on the
You
sort.
need the geotechnical study before you can even determine if the DPW is gonna go there.
Yes,
So I think you've gotta separate that in
That-
years.
That's why I had that in 20.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
we cut it off last
Okay.
year, we should fund at least that much. this
Right.
year for
right, that
design.
makes sense.
That's fine. The DPW's due for something. It's been a
I-
while.
I'm personally not convinced. If I had to pick up on all these things, I mean, I'm much more worried about PFAS and wastewater than I am a new DPW. I mean, I'm not getting it
for 20 million.
for 20 million. If I gotta spend 20 million, I want it to be clean drinking water, right? Or make sure that our sewage doesn't go in the ocean. I mean. And I don't think we have 20 million plus 20 million plus 20 million plus 20 million. I just.
What we talked about the other night was, what can we do for 10? What can we do for 15? You know, ask the question a different way.
Yes.
Right? Rather than add up all the requirements and price it out, say, I only have 5 minutes. What can you do? You know, just flip the paradigm. a little bit.
Well, the less expensive options could in fact having them just remain where they are and just, if there's another building that needs to get built on that site. That's a simple Quonset hut type structure, something that covers the vehicles, that's been sort of a just.
Exactly right.
Exactly.
Well, didn't we fund that? We funded something there that wasn't built,
We did.
You did do a pull bond.
That was a long
The
time.
pole behind.
but it's still, it has never come back into the general fund.
Yes, it has.
It will.
No.
Didn't
Mm-mm.
it?
It's still out there, but
I think it's still out there, isn't it?
Right, it's still out there in a capital budget, and a capital.
is the houseboat still out there too?
Hold on, what does that mean? So there's cash in an account somewhere that's been allocated?
No,
but not-
it's been appropriated but not spent, and in the capital budget side. Keep stuff there for a long, in the operating budget, you have to move it to free cash every year. If you don't spend it, in
Mhm.
capital, it's not that way, so we have the Quonset hut, we have the harbor master's boat. And I think we went through this
We did.
several months ago, that there's some items that have been out there. That we need to have moved into free cash to,
So if it's been appropriated but not spent, then it's sitting in cash somewhere, or?
But didn't we say if it was out for
Yes.
2 years, it would get
Yes.
reviewed?
yes,
That was one of our summary.
Yeah, we haven't done that review
we
yet.
haven't done the review,
That'll happen.
which we need to
So-
do
so
before we
how
do the.
much was that? You said 700?
I don't know,
Heard something,
Oh,
like 240.
I don't know.
something like that.
Sarah, I agree with what you just said. We need to do that review before we do the capital.
Right.
Is that, on your timelines, for,
We can add it,
What is the approximate amount of appropriated funds that haven't been spent? That have been sitting maybe longer than a year, things that are.
It's a few hundred.
A strategic question though, because we're talking about potentially pulling way back on what the DPW facility might be. If we're not sure that there's gonna be something or that we want to look at doing something up on where the old compost site is, should we spend the money on doing geotech there? Do we need to have that other conversation first about, if there is in fact resistance to spending that much money on that kind of facility versus doing a couple of smaller pieces on the existing site?
I guess my feeling is, why not do the geotech? So you know whether that land is usable for anything.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It's one of our few
Alright.
pieces of properties.
Because
That we have,
It's money well spent. I mean,
being next to that medical building, it might make a good assisted living place or, you know, affordable housing or something too, or if the DPW were to stay where it is.
Okay, I just wanted to
Yeah.
check.
I just think
That
it's
site
worth
analysis would help.
figuring it
either
out.
way.
What does it cost to do the?
250, 250,000.
To authorize some geotech work and some other sort of advanced siting analysis.
Trying to get the grade on the road.
This would be of the current DPW site.
No, the current compost.
Where the compost is, yeah.
One off of School Street.
Yeah, for school streets.
How big
With
is
all the
that?
seals,
Acre,
Acres,
2, 1?
Seven.
bigger,
7 or 8.
Used to be a horse thing up there, you know, a lot of
um,
fields.
Silver Star
usable
Stable.
acres is, I say 5. and so-
Wow,
Big.
Right.
It's a nice chunk of
doesn't seem anywhere near
Kit
it.
glass
It's not
drive.
really, so when you're up there, it doesn't.
They're not
you don't
using
quite see
whole
the
piece of
this
land.
aspect.
Cause the roads at board, you got School Street here and then you got, what is that, Atwater Ave here.
You have that cell
that.
tower.
That weird cut through road that,
Yeah.
something glass lane, Kit glass lane.
Kit glass.
Yeah, Kit glass,
Yeah.
and then the driveway to the medical center, right? Those are your 4, right?
Yeah, it's bound.
That's right.
Moving around, so.
It's a
That
seagull
water goes
playground, yeah.
way up around, I think, so I think the property goes back deep, it's pretty deep.
But Atwater's one of the 4
Right, yeah,
borders.
yeah,
Wow, 5 or 6.
okay. So,
So what would be helpful to you in terms of sort of next steps on that? Yes.
I mean, it all sounds pretty logical. I mean, we've suggested looking at some questions about the PFAS level of spending. Not to live dangerously with bad water, but just to understand what the cost spend is. The discussion about the DPW building sounds logical.
Yeah.
I do worry about a bunch of capital things all bunching up around the same time and the political implications of people saying,
I
oh,
think,
you wanna build a DPW and you've got this and that, and oh, by the way, we got Essex Elementary, and suddenly it's like, pick one and come back in 10 years. We don't
I
want.
mean, I think the sewer is important,
The sewer is
It's selected.
That's,
Oh, for MSBA.
So that'll be a significant. You know, milestone if they don't get picked
we'll cheer.
When do they hear?
in January. I think.
And what's ironic to me is every Essex person I talk to is like hard and fast on the 2.5. Right?
But they want the new building.
Well, that's what those two things
That's the
are incongruous.
And they're
They
paying,
do not reconcile.
and they're
Like you
paying,
have to pick one or the other, right?
they're paying 400,000 cash for their piece of the field. They didn't want it bonded,
Which is cool, that's great, I mean,
but they're still spending money and not spending it on the operating budget.
obviously, when it comes to school, we're not talking about 400 grand, right? We're talking
No,
about
but-
50 million bucks.
Right,
Or what, I don't know,
Yeah,
40, 50, 60,
Yeah.
some big number, and so. Just to cover the debt that they would have to incur would be. Like
Right.
800 grand a year, so I don't
Yeah,
know.
850.
Yeah.
What, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
So unless they're in some weird box where they're saying. 2.5% hard, not a penny more on the operating. But 800 to $1 million a year on the debt for a new school is totally cool.
Yeah.
I mean, unless they're in that box, I don't understand, because to me, dollars is dollars,
right.
right? That 800 grand, I'm making that number up, obviously pushes their. Tax rate over 2.5%, obviously.
the other thing that's probably fueling them is their house values are going up because of the success of the school. And that will increase their taxing too. So
Okay,
that-
let's not
They-
talk about the
yeah,
schools.
Yep, let's keep moving.
I mean, I think that we kind of were feeling that the sewer treatment plant expense made sense,
Yep, that's the priority.
because we'll recover some in operating. I think, as we've asked for before, I think on the water main improvements, I think we need to understand the total things that need to be done, the priorities and what's been done to date, just so that we get a better feel. I don't like, I get nervous when Chuck says, I want a placeholder. You know, and we're saying, oh, we want something more definitive.
Well, with the sewer plant and the water PFAS looming, I think we should rethink the water main. And not just replace it based on age, but look at where it can save money in leak studies and where there's breaks. You know, other than that, you know, we don't need to replace.
Well, we want to be proactive, not
We do.
reactive.
But we've got a lion's share, and that's, I think.
That's what we need to know. We
Right.
don't
Have
know
we
that.
done the lion's share?
I
We don't
think
know.
we have.
Yeah, that's, to me,
No, I
I'm
think.
still not sure.
I would hope so, because we've been allocating $3 to $4 million a year, right, for the past.
No.
No, total, I know that's a combination of roads and pipes and
He showed
things.
the map that had the highlighted roads that we've done and those that were still remained and were.
There's a lot of old pipes, but they're holding up well.
Into it.
That's the thing.
There's a lot to go.
We're just into it.
The roads are, I mean, we've talked about this, we got 700,000 in roads a year, and then it drops to 450, and I guess one question is. Are we solving the problem, or has that become a placeholder for more money to go somewhere else?
So you're talking pipes.
Are we talking pipes or roads? That's
We were
what-
talking.
I
about-
was sorry. But I was just coming at high level saying, we've allocated somewhere between $3 and $4 million a year for, you know, CapEx, which yes, is a combination of roads and pipes and.
And apparatus,
Right, but I'm just like, I thought we were getting ahead, like,
well, the water main,
not just band-aiding, I thought we were,
No, we are, but.
you
but
know,
I'm
moving
just-
down the football
all-
field.
No, all I mean is that there's a lot of roads with a lot of pipes in them and
Yeah.
we've done, you know, some amount of them and there's a lot that remains. That's all I mean.
You'd like a
So Andy, would
percent
that be-
complete.
Right.
Would
But
that be
then it feels like, I don't know, before I
Would
do
that
it,
be
you know, like,
15%?
CapEx was never done like.
I wouldn't quote you, I wouldn't.
we
quote
didn't
you.
do water main.
I would love a
But-
feel.
Yeah, something in the, you know, maybe you're 20-25%.
Chuck will say there's a lot of red on the map still, but that's just based on age and, you know, a lot of that old pipe is performing well.
Yeah.
And he even said it's thicker than the new stuff they're putting in, so it's like, the one drawback is it tends to accumulate sediment. So if we can come up with a way to maintain the, you know, clean them without spending all this money flushing, hydrant flushing all the time. That's.
That's
I
the
mean.
method.
Does every community flush their hydrants? Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I was gonna say, I thought that was kind of normal.
It is, but
Gets rid of the sediment.
Yeah.
he was saying that, yeah, the manganese or something in our water is.
So there, so the extra benefits of the filtering of the PFAS is you will have less
Yeah. so that should help.
manganese and a few other elements.
Yeah.
Um,
So that, what I understood from Chuck is the plan is to do, they're gonna do Walker Road over the winter.
That's underway now.
And then you had 3 million allocated for FY 25 for Pleasant Street. I'm not sure if that's what's in the spreadsheet.
Well, we had lots of money for Pleasant Street last year. Is that's
I know.
now being done on Walker Road instead?
Right.
Okay.
It got pushed up because.
And the rush on Pleasant was for the detour road, but that might be getting pushed off now too with Central Street, so. But that was really what was driving Pleasant Street was the detour road, so I don't know if it really needs, if it's leaking. Or if there's in danger of breaking at Pleasant.
I mean, basically, you know, Chuck would advocate for, you know, 1 to 2 million every year in water pipe. Just keep chipping away at it.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of reason to push away from it.
Was.
I'm just asking for numbers and data
Yeah.
of saying, I don't like the idea that we just spend X amount on an item every year. Because we think that's a good number, when we have no numbers that tell us that's a good number.
We'd rather spend the money on the plants than the pipes.
We don't know what the total book of work is to be done.
He's giving you that.
Yeah.
Do you have that?
Yeah, we do.
Push back a little bit on that one.
I'm talking water mains.
He's giving you that now with,
He's got some of the, like the near term numbers, and then that's what the That's what the.
Anyway, we can represent.
Yeah.
both
I
these.
just think-
I think I'm looking for one page, here's the amount of pipe we have in the town, here's how much.
And he provided
Here's
that,
what's
we're
left.
happy to provide it again.
Brendan, my feedback is we should rethink the criteria and it's not just based on age, but where it can save us money from leaks and where it's a headache or a danger of breaking, then let's go ahead and replace it, but.
Well, part of the problem is we did that in the past and we had all sorts of breaks.
But it's gotten a lot better. I mean, we've dealt with
Right.
a lot of the I down and, you know, and the salinity of the plant's gone down and we all know about that. But my sense is that, we're probably about another 25 or 30 years into it. From what I heard from Chuck, and that we're spending at a fairly steady rate. And if we accelerate that, people get upset because we've torn up all the streets and nobody can get around. So it seems like a good balance.
To keep it going,
And I do remember the maps with all the pipes and the greens and the reds
Yeah.
and all that.
right, there's plenty of red.
Yeah, I take your point, the data, I agree, the data's been presented, but personally, this is just how I'd like it, some simple that says like. I don't know, 10 years ago, 90% of the pipes were crap and 10% were good, and now. You know,
Right.
60% are crap and 40%. That's very, so I can go chronologically, we were here and now we're here, and I can say we've made a, move in the right direction.
And, and we've got 8 years ahead or something
Yeah.
like that.
Right.
Exactly, if you draw that right.
Because then you can do your FP&A, you plan your budget.
Yeah.
8 years out.
I mean, you
I
got,
don't need to know the details of like Pleasant Street's bad and
Exactly.
this street's good and.
That's good, that, those charts are really good for communicating to the residents. So
Absolutely.
they can see the impacted area, but FinCom makes something different.
I've lived on Red Street forever.
I've lived on Red Street. I mean, I think I've been around long enough for this committee to remember when we really didn't spend a whole lot on this stuff. And the town did not spend money on fixing pipes on a proactive forward-going basis. It was, oh gosh, there's water pouring up out of the ground, let's go deal with it. And so this strategy we've been on for the last decade is different than what happened in the 90s, 80s. You know, we're cleaning up a lot of stuff that should have been done over the years.
now we're gonna focus on facilities at this point.
Well, I think we need to look at everything
Mhm.
and say, okay, what needs to get done in what time frame, and say, okay, this is how much we spend a year on it.
And here's what we're accomplishing.
And also look to see whether we have the carryover from year to year.
So that facilities plan, has that been finalized?
Yes, we could check our copy.
We did agree it was a living document.
The selectmen's
Should be.
meeting packet this week.
Living document.
Yeah.
So we should change anything. For that period of time.
What else we got?
Wait a minute, is my agenda, okay. So
Anything else?
do you have enough on the capital?
We got some
Yeah,
direction.
just certainly enough.
Yeah.
We'll have to keep going.
It's gone through 3 pens over there.
Yeah, I'll work with Jeff and they put together some summary sheets to help.
Yeah, we just want simple stuff.
Yeah.
Not complicated stuff. Okay. So liaison updates. Maury, school.
School, this committee met since the last school collaboration meeting and all that, so there's no new information to report. And I think we sort of covered it at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
Is there another collaboration meeting planned?
Yes,
Tentatively tomorrow morning
Yeah.
by Zoom.
Yeah.
Close to in
A
person.
super meeting with everyone?
No,
No,
Just a
it's
collaboration.
Just a collaboration.
yeah,
Is there another super meeting?
No.
Not scheduled yet.
Okay.
seems to be there's a little pushback on things and we'll have something to report tomorrow.
I was on the first 2 hours, I don't know how long it went, school committee meeting last night,
Yeah.
but the one point that I picked up that I thought was interesting was. The fields came in 200 grand, below budget.
because they didn't use the contingency fund. Yeah,
Are they now
Okay.
done?
Alright, maybe that.
Yes. Now all
No,
done?
no, it's just they came in to 200 grand less, so. Maybe everybody knew, I don't know.
Let's hope they don't pull like with the fire department and use the savings on a new truck.
They can't. Anything on the fire?
I think we gotta put on cover.
Mike, anything on the police?
Nothing.
No. Peter, anything on the harbor?
Nope.
Andy, anything on DPW?
Nothing new, so I met with them before last meeting, so nothing new.
Okay. Dean, anything on CPC?
What's up with them?
Grant applications are coming in. There's the church steeple wants about 80 grand to fix their steeple. They have part of a fund that maintains it, but they need to supplement it. The historical museum is looking for window treatments. Well, you laugh, but it's 15 grand or so.
Oh, I know window treatments are expensive.
Yeah,
I don't know why you need window treatments in a
Let's
building
see.
that's not lived in myself.
there was something going on at the Powderhouse Hill Reservation and Newport Park. There was something going, there was an application about
Oh, boy.
Oh, just a small parking.
yes, getting some preserving access for their maintenance of the roads up there.
Just a couple free parking spots at the rear of the complex.
Maintenance of the powerhouse of the fire roads.
Yes, I think that's like their main access or something is they want to maintain access for their vehicles to get in and maintain those roads.
They
Is
have
what
access,
the-
Yeah.
I think it's more for the parking, the trailhead,
Yeah,
because. So there's been some tension with the housing authority in terms of people parking in there and the tenants not. Having enough parking spaces for their needs. It's complicated, when the housing authority buildings were built, they were actually. Built on top of the right of way that the town owns. So we're negotiating with them to have. Deeded new easement through their driveway and then building a couple of parking spots. On the old or the current. Easement that's not built on at the back end of the property.
Yeah.
So,
there was some more work on Winthrop Field being proposed and some more Western Woods title search, so that's what's cooking on the CPC side. For next year, we're leery of whether we need anything for the rotunda, but we're still hearing that might pretty much be covered.
Dean, do you know what they have for funds available and what the amount collected is? I struggle to remember that.
I don't have, I can get that for the next meeting. I do know that the state match was around 20% this year, which is, everyone was a little disappointed at that, but it's related to real estate transactions, which are very
right.
down this year, so.
yeah, more times keep. Going, so the pot gets divided up.
Yeah.
More times, so that drops the percentage. Really, we're talking about 400,000 range of revenue, and they're probably sitting on about 400.
Yeah, I think I've got it here. So for fiscal year 24, they were collecting 420. And expecting a state match, well, this was a 30% state match of 126, so.
520, and then they spend some portion of.
And last year they spent. They, after last year's projects, they had 202,400 remaining.
So presumably this year they'll collect about 400 to 500,000 and have about 200,000.
Yeah, in other years they had, here it is with the 20%. Other years they had a lot of extra money, which I think they spent the year before last, didn't they? Fiscal year 23, they spent a lot. Yeah, so with the 20% match, the match would be 84,000, so they'd collect 500,000. And they would have 100, so they're only gonna have 160,000 after
Right.
the fiscal year 24 projects. Cause they spent 436.
And they have to spend a threshold amount on those 4 areas like historic, open
10%.
space.
Yeah.
But once they
Yeah.
set it aside, but. Once they've met their threshold, then the extra can be sunk into something, like historic renovation of the Rotunda.
Yep.
Even though they've met their housing.
Correct.
What's the tax rate for the CPC?
1.5% surcharge.
On the assessed value minus 100,000.
I don't take the 2.5 plus 1.5, right? That's not how it works.
No. It's but it's 1.5%. The increase is 1.5% of the 2.5% increase.
Okay, it's 1.5% of the 2.5% increase.
Yeah, plus the total. I mean, it's 1.5% of the total taxes minus 100,000 value.
So you see your quarterly tax number and then a little number down below that says CPC.
Right.
Pretty perspective.
And at one point they wanted to increase it to 3%.
Nice night, folks.
Okay. So next item is minutes and we don't have any. Next meeting date. So I have scheduled a meeting for Monday at 6 o'clock before town meeting. I don't know whether we need it or not, but I had to post it today because of the Friday holiday in order to get it there for Monday. I thought of that at 3:30 this afternoon. So I've posted it. Do we think there's gonna be any more flux in the warrant items or?
No, the only flux might be a definitive on the Article 11 being passed over.
Okay, so I'll keep the meeting there and just kind of wait to see if I hear anything. If I hear that nothing's changing, that we don't have to do anything, then I'll cancel it. Okay,
Where would the meeting be if
in the Learnings Common at the Memorial School. I think it's where we met last time.
Right off the lobby.
Yeah.
Lobby. So do we need to call ourselves into session and then?
We don't need to because we don't have that item on the
Okay.
warrant.
Great.
That was.
Sarah, you're
I
in,
don't know.
you're in room, Sarah.
Yeah.
You're in room 202. I think it's called the faculty something.
That's not what you sent me in the email. It's not what I posted on the agenda.
Well, let me check.
You said the finance committee is scheduled to meet in the project room,
Well, there
202.
you go. 202, right?
So I said project room. I forgot to get the 202 in there, but that's okay.
It's clearly on the second floor.
I also did it as a middle high school and the town clerk had to change it for me to Memorial School. Since I didn't know where we were going. I don't know. Yeah, there is. Okay, so now. Outside of that, when do we want to meet again? And what do we want to do? Or do we want to wait till January, pick things up again on the budget?
Next October.
Well, I'd like to have finish off this look at capital projects that have not been active for 2 years. I mean, I'd like to complete
Okay.
that because I think that sets the stage to look at the capital projects that are requested.
Okay,
Yeah, I'd like to do it as, you know. So the fourth Wednesday is what? Is that just before Thanksgiving?
No, that's after.
Exactly.
Getting the 20.
I have down a FinCom meeting on the 29th of November. Is that wrong?
We had talked about that being a joint.
right, we
meeting.
talked about a
Oh,
joint,
that's
but
joint.
for capital, but we haven't done the capital.
Well, why don't we do the capital then?
Or can we?
I mean,
do
you know,
the
the look at the projects that have been hanging around.
Yeah, we can do that on the 29th,
And have that on
and not it be it won't be a joint meeting, it'll
I
just be.
understand, but it'll be setting the stage, I think.
Are
to be
people good
ready.
with that?
I may not make it 29th, but
Well, then we gotta
Try to
cancel.
Zoom.
We just gotta cancel.
can we do it the second Wednesday? No, is that too soon.
That's too soon. Almost to the second Wednesday.
Well,
This is,
of
yeah.
December,
Oh, you're talking December.
yeah.
Well, I think we need to keep moving along here.
Oh.
Well, we have in December, we have, can you remind me when the joint meeting is in presenting the budget? I don't think I have that on my calendar.
The 18th of Monday.
Yes, yes.
Yep,
29th. so-
The 18th is what we're targeting for the.
I have that in my.
December.
calendar.
You do? You're
I
good.
do too.
I have the 29th
Oh, yeah.
in there,
Okay,
capital.
I have the 29th
And
also.
29/18 is what I have on the calendar.
yeah, so on November 29th, we'll meet to go over all of the existing capital projects and
Please.
where they stand.
Can I add an item, because obviously
Yes.
we've been going 2.5 hours, so for the 29th. I just want to talk about the town's cash, and I know you've sent some
Yep.
reports and. I just want to go through that and make
Okay.
sure we're all on the same page.
Okay,
and if we could get a final copy of the facilities report.
Yes, yes, and then I'll have Chuck look up some one pagers on water and.
yeah, okay.
A little bit more if he asks some options.
And then for that facilities report, seems like a joint meeting would be useful for talking about that if we're going to.
So select board on Monday
18th.
had the guy. He did the study, do a
Oh.
presentation for them
This
this past Monday.
past month.
Right?
Yes.
I zoomed out before that was over with.
So our meeting with the select board on the 18th of December is basically your presentation of the budget.
That'd be the preliminary budget presentations, yeah.
What time would that meeting be?
Um,
7? I mean, or is it?
yeah, we'll start at 6:30, but we can schedule.
No, whatever you tell me.
Yeah, I don't have the agenda.
Okay.
Select board's usually 6:30.
Can we do 6:30?
Sure.
Okay.
Do it. I mean, just. You do it, I just want to know it.
Yeah.
I'm told that we're the only ones that have 7 o'clock meetings. Everyone else meets at 6:30.
CBC is 5:30.
Okay, so what I have down is a standby meeting before the special town meeting. I have a meeting on the 29th and then on the December 18th. Do I have that correct numbers?
Yes,
Okay, great.
and then we will be meeting on,
Second and fourth Wednesdays.
yes. January 3rd. Yeah, we'll start up our weekly meetings, but we're gonna have to decide what to do on the third week of the month. Whether we meet on Tuesday or Thursday,
Okay, so starting in January, we'll do weekly meetings.
on Wednesdays, except for the third week of the month.
Okay,
Every third week.
That's ZBA.
We have, what, an extra 3 weeks?
Yeah, that's gonna go fast.
Yeah.
We'll fill it.
Let's shoot for,
Usually we kind of get to the end and
April
we're
1st.
kind of finished, but we'll just kind of see, maybe we can take the third week off, if
Right.
it works out.
The school will take every bit of time they're given.
But we anticipate a nice benefit, right? I could give 3 weeks gives the district time, right, to get.
Right, so they typically don't have their health insurance number until. Right, that first, the very end of March, so give it time to nail down some of those numbers that. Was coming at the last minute.
Is Chairman Abbey on board with doing something reasonable in 2.5%? Or are they gonna try to go back to their 3.5?
They haven't gone that
Threaten
far.
loss, yeah.
I mean, Manchester has not said you have to hold it at 2.5%.
No, but that was the understanding at that joint meeting in September.
No,
That's what Essex-
That's what Essex said.
Sorry.
That's not what Manchester said.
Right. Well, that was at Essex.
And that's, we've been very clear to the school committee.
Yeah.
That, you know, we're not dictating a 2.5. We want you to give us a number that,
Yeah, we want a good school.
right,
Okay.
at a reasonable price.
We did.
We concluded.
Yes. Oh, a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Peter moves to adjourn. A second.
Second.
Andy seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. I have
Process.
a conundrum on my calendar that I'm hoping you can help me fix more. On the school contract, is that on December 12th to the 14th?
Yeah, there's the stuff we're trying to figure out the best way to.
I wrote it down as Tuesdays, but I thought we were Thursdays. I have it different dates,
Yeah.
different places.
the.
We're not a private corporation.
Again, yes.
That's like the boss that can say, that's what you're gonna do.
That's why, that's why I'm asking the question. It's easy to talk about, you know, the bold language, but
Right.
hard to pull.
It's hard.
Sorry, we're talking about December.
Either 12th or 14th.
Basic question.
What do you have?
Peter's got it collected.
Like your point about the